Ever wondered what would happen if Naruto had a powerful prodigy elder brother like Sasuke? Let's find out. This is the story of Naruto's elder brother. The White Storm of Uzumaki clan. Please consider liking, sharing and subbing if you like the what if. This really means a lot to me. Let's begin now. A tall and lone figure travels along the road leading to the gates of Konohagakure, their form dressed in a black dress uniform jacket with the upper body featuring a hood and a beak tip, which features blue lining along the torso with the lower half of the coat forming two tails. Black cargo pants with white from pocket to pocket having chain suspenders to their mid-thigh. The black and white trim high collar vest with a faceless mask on their face, with blacked out eye sockets and a thin smile. It's been so long, the figure thought. They see a group people leaving the gate as they approach, one a man with gravity-defying silver hair with his hit eye covering his left eye and dressed on standard Jonin attire. The second was a beautiful red head in a high ponytail with violet eyes and dressed in Jonin attire, but a sword across her lower back. This is our first mission outside the village. Be on guard, she says. The third was a 16-year-old pink-hair girl with green eyes, dressed in a red top with black gloves, low heel, knee-high boots, black shorts underneath a short pink apron skirt and elbow protectors. The fourth was a boy with black hair and eyes dressed in white cargos, a high collar and long-sleeved blue shirt with a fan on the back. HN, the boy says. The fifth was an older man dressed in tan pants to his shins, a gray sleeveless shirt and a conical hat on his head. The last were a pair of twins, one blonde with blue eyes and the other red with violet eyes and thin whiskers on their cheeks. Both are dressed in long-sleeve zip-up jumpsuits to their thighs, but one orange and black, the other blue and black with white stockings and black boots for both. The group backed the figure, but the redhead and their eyes met as they back, causing the redhead to look back in confusion. Something wrong, Kushina-sama, the other Jonin asks. Kushina glances back to the retreating figure. It's nothing, Kakashi, she replies, as they continue on. The figure glances back. Well, you haven't changed at all, they thought. The figure continues through the village, and it hadn't changed in their 10-year absence, however gone were the hateful glares and daily beatings of old. The villagers give the figure barely a glance as they arrived at the Hokage Tower. How can I help you, the receptionist asks. I am here to see Lord Hokage on a sensitive matter, the figure says, revealing his gender. The receptionist looks over the tall man and presses a button. Hokage-sama, someone to see you, she relays. Send them in, a voice shouts. The man steps in with his hood still up as his gaze meets the Yondaime himself, dressed in Jonin attire and a white coat and red flames with Yondaime emblazed down the back. Minato leans forward with a serious look on his face. Who are you, he says, but the man remains quiet. Minato's eyes narrow as two Anbu drop down with a cat mask. Anbu having her sword at his throat. Lord Hokage, ask you a question, she hisses. How harsh, Nico, as for my Iden Melanie. I am the taint on his legacy, the man says, pointing his gloved hand. Minato froze and his eyes slowly widen. It can't be, he whispers. The man removes his hood to reveal short and messy black hair with long bangs, framing his face, but one wide and his mask to reveal a strong chin and defined cheekbones, purple eyes and a straight slender nose, with a scar running under his left eye towards his ear. Mitsuomi? Minato blurts. Mitsuomi secures his mask to his belt. So you do remember me even after 10 years, he coldly says. Minato slightly flinches at Mitsuomi's cold tone. Son, he starts, but Mitsuomi raises his gloved hand. Do not call me that, Mitsuomi curtly said. Show some respect to Hokage-sama, the other Anbu with a hawk mask shot. Mitsuomi shoots a glare at Hawk as the tension slowly builds, but Minato raises his hand. Enough. Mitsuomi, why have you returned, he asks. Mitsuomi turns back to Minato. I wish to formally join the village, he replies. Minato stares at Mitsuomi with a soft look, knowing who trained you from Kushina. You're more than likely high Chunin or Takebetsu Jonin, he says. A fair backusment, but I will settle for Genin not to show favoritism, Mitsuomi comments and Minato slowly nods, but has a better idea, tossing him a black hit eye. You won't have to go that far. You can work as a Ronin for the time being. You can also work with a newly minted Genin to test them. Also, since you've returned, you can stay in the compound if you like, Minato says. Mitsuomi bows slightly but shakes his head. I'll decline staying there, he says, and simply vanishes with a static shunshin. Minato's shoulders slump after Mitsuomi vanishes. I wonder how Kushina and girls will react to his return, he thought. Hokage-sama, is that really Mitsuomi, Nico asks. Minato sighs deeply with a nod. He is. He left 10 years ago with Kushina's student Shisho Kiryu, but she vehemently wouldn't tell me where, he explains. Many people were actually happy when he left. The things they called him and did, Nico muses, returning to her post. Minato slowly returns to his work with a ruefully look. I hope someday you'll forgive this foolish man, he thought. A week later. Mitsuomi found himself an apartment near the red light district, much to Minato's protest, but the young man's answer was it was no longer his home. Minato hadn't informed the village or the council of his return, but the council would eventually find out. The bright spot of the past week was reconnecting with the Sandaime Hokage and Makoto Uchiha, her being spared with her son Sasuke and clanswoman Izumi from the Bakasur committed by Itachi. Makoto was like a second mother to him and caught him up on his own mother and sisters. Hiruzen challenged him to several shogi matches and privately tested his skills, also brushing him up on clan and political laws if and when his status is revealed. Mitsuomi today found himself on Minato's stone head with a cigarette burning in his mouth when Nico appears behind him. Okage-sama requests your presence, Nico relays, and Mitsuomi turns with a stream of smoke. Right, Mitsuomi says, spitting out his cigarette, and the pair shunshin to the office. Minato sits at his desk as Nico and Mitsuomi arrive. Thank you for coming, he says, and slips into Hokage mode. Team 7 has requested 8 on a C-rank mission, which is now A rank, but borderline S rank. I would like you to backus them, but not to interfere with their main mission, Minato says. Orders received, Mitsuomi curtly said, and slowly fades away. So the wayward son has returned, a voice comments. Minato sees his sensei stepping through the window. It's been a week, and that's the length of a conversation between us, he says. The kid left on bad terms with you and the village. His mother and sisters on the other hand, Jiraiya muses, and Minato nods. He still believes I see him as a reminder of that incident. Coupled with having the soul of the Kyuubi inside him as well, Minato says. The village praises his sisters while he is scorned, Minato adds, and Jiraiya ruefully nods. Wave country. Team 7 find themselves in a desperate situation, first encountering the Demon Brothers, and once reaching Wave dealing with Zabuza Momochi, Aoi Rakusho, and worst Raiga Kurasuki with his gang. Kushina suffers a nasty shock from the Kiba blades, while Kakashi suffers chakra exhaustion, but manages to kill Aoi and recover the Raijin sword of the Nidaime Hokage. The only bright spot to some was Sasuke awakening his Sharingan with Sakura fawning over him, much to the disgust of the Namikaze twins and matriarch. Kushina was sitting at the table with her daughters and the rest of the team. Tsunami was sitting with them, as was her father, and her daughter Inari was glowering them. Mom, what will we do about Zabuza and Kurasuki, Naruko asks, and her twin Mito nods. Sasuke scoffs with a smirk. Now that I have my Sharingan they stand no chance, he sneers, and Sakura swoons. The Namikaze trio glare at Sasuke, but suddenly there was a loud knock on the door. Tsunami rises from her chair and heads for the door, but quickly came back with a tall but masked man. Who are you, Kushina asks, defensively. The man holds up his hit I-8. Lord Hokage sent me, he says, his voice distorted. Sasuke scoffs once again and leers at the man. Why, when I have my Sharingan, he thought. Can you remove your mask to alleviate our host's, Kushina comments, ignoring the leering Sasuke. Please don't faint, the man says, removing his mask. The twins and Kushina's eyes narrow but slowly widen in shock. Sachi. Nai Nai. Mitsu Nai. All three shout. Mitsuomi rubs his head with a soft look. Hello, mother. Naru. Mito, he says. Kushina immediately engulfs her son in a hug, as did Mito, but Naruko slaps him in the face, but then hugs him. That's for leaving Mitsunai, she chides. Mitsuomi rubs his cheek with a cough. Sorry, Naru, he says. When did you get back, Sachi, Kushina says. Sasuke silently scoffs with a sneer on his face. Who cares, he looks weak, he whispers. Mitsuomi looks over the rooster Uchiha and could see the arrogance but snorts. I can see why Itachi let you live, he shot. Don't talk about Sasuke-kun like that. Sakura screeches, but Mitsuomi ignores her. I got back just over a week ago. We actually backed each other at the gate, Mitsuomi says. Sakura charges Mitsuomi, but the purple eye merc grabs her fist without looking at him. Don't think for a second you can beat me, he coldly says, pushing her back. Sakura. Sasuke, go upstairs and check on Kakashi, Kushina orders. Sasuke glares at Kushina and Mitsuomi, but skulks upstairs with his pet in tow. Kushina turns back to her son, but a ruffles catches her attention. Sachi, your shirt, she asks. Mitsuomi blinks and pops his forehead as he unbuttons his vest. From it pops a small snow tiger with blue-gray eyes. I'm sorry about that, Kali, Mitsuomi says and rubs her head. Mito and Naruko look on with goggly eyes as the tiger looks up. Who are they, she asks. My mother, Kushina Namikaze, and my sisters Naruko and Mito, Mitsuomi replies, pulling her out his vest. Mitsuomi places Kali on his lap as he sits in a chair. She can talk, Mitsunai, Naruko asks, and Mitsuomi nods, pointing to his stomach. Has Kyuubi tried to harm you, Kushina asks, and Mitsuomi shakes his head. We've come to a working relationship, Mitsuomi replies. Suddenly a piece of paper slips under the door and by itself flies towards Mitsuomi, but the purple eye Uzumaki caught it. Seems they've arrived. Excellent, Mitsuomi says and places Kali on the floor. Usachi, Kushina asks. People important to me, Mitsuomi says, softly as he heads for the door. Kushina and the twins follow him outside and to the beach as two figures stood, dressed in grey travel cloaks. One has a feather headdress with a mask was on their face, turning slightly the mask has only one eye blacked out and reveals an amber eye with blue eyeshadow. He isn't alone, the second says. On their face is a strange mask of white with pink compound insect eyes on it. Mitsuomi releases the paper and it flies back to the first figure and shockingly back emulates with their cloak. The figures remove their masks and reveals a beautiful young woman with blue hair and another young woman with shoulder-length white hair in a short ponytail with distinctly pink eyes. I thought we were to meet in Konoha, the first asks. Sorry, but Lord Hokage asked me to backast on their mission, Mitsuomi replies and turns to his family. Mother, this is Konan and Kuretsuchi, my partners, he adds. Konan removes her headdress with a bow. It's a pleasure, Kushina-sama. Mitsuomi has told us a great deal about you and his sisters, she states. A pleasure to meet you as well, Kuretsuchi states, bowing as well. The Namikaze trio bow in turn. It's a pleasure as well. You said partners, Kushina questions. Hi, we are bounty hunters, Konan says and glances to Mitsuomi, and a couple, she adds. The twins gawk but Kushina's eyes start to sparkle. Grandchildren, she shouts and Mitsuomi face palms. Kushina immediately grabs Konan and Kuretsuchi in a huge hugs as the blue hair beauty blushes. We haven't reached that step. I'm still a virgin, Konan says softly. Same here, Kuretsuchi states. Kushina releases Konan and glances to her son, but gives a thumbs up, and Nikki made sure he replies. What about Koko, Naruto comments, slyly. Mitsuomi freezes and a rain cloud forms over his head, while in Konoha a purple-haired Takebetsu Jonin sneezes and accidentally jams a kunai in a prisoner. Will the two of you be joining Konoha when we return, Kushina asks, changing the subject. Konan slowly nods. Hi. I'll take the same position as Mitsuomi, she replies and glances his way. I'll decide later, Kuretsuchi says. I'm Aranin per Lord Hokage's wishes, Mitsuomi adds, but sees the tired looks on his sisters. Mother. Why don't you all turn in for the night? Can't keep watch tonight, Mitsuomi suggests. As if on cue, Naruto yawns loudly and Mito giggles. Okay, Sachi, but when we return home. You're gonna tell us about your travels, Kushina states and kisses his temple. Mitsuomi slowly nods as his sisters hug him once again. Kali is sleeping with us, Naruto calls out and Menma waves. Missed you, Mitsuomi whispers, kissing her forehead and then kissing Kuretsuchi. Missed you too, and your mother is like you said, Konan replies and Mitsuomi snorts. Would you tell her everything, Kuretsuchi adds. Mitsuomi's eyes flicker as Konan hugs him and strokes his back. She knows about that one thing because of Aunt Mikoto, but the other ties into why Nikki isn't with us, he whispers. XXX. Naruto comes downstairs with a small yawn with Mito in tow and Kali in her arms. Their mother was making breakfast with Tsunami, even Kakashi was up but still had crutches. Kushina places several plates on the table. Morning girl, she says. Morning mom. Where's Mitsunai, Naruto asks. Konan comes down next in an oversized shirt and shorts with Kuretsuchi in tow, wearing the same. He's still sleeping. He watched the house all night despite my protest, Konan replies. All night, Mito asks and Konan nods, taking a seat. Sasuke and Sakura came down soon and everyone starts eating, with Inari sulking as well. Eventually everyone migrate from the table after eating, leaving Kushina, Kuretsuchi and Konan. The Amber Eye Kunoichi knows Kushina as Mitsuomi's mother, but also as Ines Klebak Kunoichi second to Tsunade Senju, and the latter trained her. So how did you and Sachi meet, Kushina asks the pair. I was on the run from pretty shady people. Mitsuomi and Konan saved me, Kuretsuchi says. Konan sips her juice with a rueful look. I'm from the land of water and a survivor of the bloodline purges. Mitsuomi and Aniki were traveling when they saved me from being. You know, she whispers and slowly freezes her cup. I possess the Hyoten in my Shiki, she adds. Kushina places her hand on Konan's shoulder. It's alright, she soothes. Meanwhile, a pair of twins and a tiger seek out their brother, finding him face down in a bed. Despite the covers, both notice their brother's broad shoulders and tall form as light snores echo. Naruto turns to her twin with a grin. Shall we wake him like we used to, she says, and Mito holds up a finger coated in chakra, causing the blonde's grin to widen. Downstairs, Kushina, Kuretsuchi and Konan were talking when a girlish yelp echoes from upstairs and the repeat starts laughing. It seems Naruto and Mito have reacquainted themselves with their big brother, Kushina says, giggling and the pair doing the same. Mitsuomi slowly climbs back in bed as his sisters laugh. How mean. You know I'm sensitive there, he whines. Naruto and Mito giggle. Sorry Mitsunai, Naruto says. Mitsuomi looks over his sisters and softly smiles. You've grown, and not just physically, he says. You've changed too, Nai, Mito says, pointing to his scar. Mitsuomi softly touches his cheek. Yay, I tangled with a Jashinist zealot named Kaihei Misaki, he replies. How's your training, Mitsuomi adds. Naruko smirks as Mito places Kali in her lap and the tiger's purrs. We've done a lot. Mom taught us tree and water walking. Holding the leaf. Kenjutsu and dispelling genjutsu. Mito even unlocked mom's chakra chains. Oh, my elemental affinity is wind and lightning. Mito got water and a minor wind, Naruko explains. That's amazing. Mine is lightning. Fire and water, but my lightning is, well, I'll show you, Mitsuomi says. He holds up his right index and thumb a few inches apart, but suddenly lightning forms between the fingers with a buzz, causing Naruko and Mito to gasp in awe. My affinity is pretty high, so I can generate lightning, Mitsuomi says. The door opens as Konan and Kuretsuchi step in. Mito-chan. Naruko-chan, your mother wants you downstairs for a team briefing, Konan says. The twins nod as Mitsuomi moves to the edge of the bed. I'll be down too, but I need to change my bandages, he says, and both nod. Konan closes the door as Mitsuomi removes his shirt, revealing a ugly scar on his back and on his right side above his hip. Any word from Yujiro, Mitsuomi asks, ruffling Kali's fur. Kuretsuchi grabs a box from Konan's pack, and as the latter climbs in bed behind him, she's in Tanzakugai and will meet us in Konoha when we return, Konan says, and places her hand on the bandages. Are you sure this is wise? You have no guarantee the Hokage will accept us. Konan, for sure, but us, Kuretsuchi adds. The bandages loosen and fall to the floor to reveal a severe burn of an acidic nature on his left arm and side. Then we leave. Mother will understand. I love all three of you, and we Uzumaki don't abandon family, Mitsuomi says. Konan opens the box of new bandages with a soft smile. I love you too, just as them, but your fantasy of a ninja choice will only happen when a ring is on my finger, she says. Mitsuomi slowly nods with a smile as Konan applies some cream. Still stiff, she asks, as he moves his arm and fingers. A little discomfort, but once we get back I'll ask Granny Tsunade to look at it and get you some medicine training, Mitsuomi says. Konan wraps her arms around his neck. Thanks, Chuu, she says, as Kuretsuchi shakes her head. XXX. Team 7 were gathered at the table as Mitsuomi came down with Konan and Kuretsuchi. Kakashi's eye widens slightly as Mitsuomi sits down. Been a while, Kakashi, he says. Kushina clears her throat. We have about a day to a week before Zabuza is ready to fight, but Raiga and his gang could attack us anytime. For now we'll guard Tazuna in groups of 3 and train as we do. Sachi, I'd like you to guard his family, she explains. Sure, but I've had some experience with Raiga. We fought in the land of rivers, Mitsuomi said. Sasuke scoffs with his arms folded and Mitsuomi shifts to a blank look. Something to say, oh mighty Uchiha, he says. Naruko snorts as Sasuke glares. Why should some no-name face Kurisuke, he says. My son is not some no-name. If Minato sent him alone. That should prove his skill, Kushina interjects and glances back to Mitsuomi. Alright, I'll leave Raiga to you. Konan and Kuretsuchi, can you guard Tazuna's family, she adds, and both nod. Hi, and I've already taken steps, Konan replies. Alright, today Naruko. Mito and I will watch Tazuna. Kakashi, I want you to train Sasuke and Sakura and teach them at least one offensive and defensive jutsu, Kushina states, and Kakashi nods. It's useless, you're all gonna die, a voice said. Inari stood in the doorway with a glare on her face. Nai-san won't die, Kali growls, hopping from Mitsuomi's lap. Inari flinches as Kali growls, but Mitsuomi snatches up the little tiger. Why do you think it's useless? You have 2 Klebak shinobi. 3 Klebak and 4 highly trained genin. Ado may have power, but in the end he is coward who will fold at the first sign of trouble, he explains. That doesn't matter, you don't know our suffering. I bet none of you have suffered, especially you with that stupid smile, Inari shouts. Mitsuomi frowns as he could feel his mother and sisters staring. Actually I do. You see, I am product of a horrible time for my mother. Many in our village saw me as a tainter and abomination not fit to breathe their air. I was beaten and cursed by everyone who saw me. Save a few, but I didn't let that drag me down, and I can smile like this because I didn't, and I've gained many precious things, he explains. Mitsuomi glances back with a soft smile. Sorry for bringing down the atmosphere. I'm going to take a walk, I'll be back soon, he says and heads for door. Inari stood quietly as Naruko and Mito were glaring at her. That's not true, is it, the little girl asks. It is. My son suffered for the first 8 years of his life because of the stupidity of others, Kushina says and follows her son. XXX. Kali chases a butterfly as Mitsuomi stood with a cigarette in his mouth. I've failed as a mother, my son smokes, Kushina says. Mitsuomi blows a stream of smoke, coping mechanism, and they are flavored, he replies. Kali trots up and rubs Kushina's leg, and the redhead picks her up. Mom, I need to tell you something, and I don't think I should wait until we get back to Konoha, Mitsuomi says, and Kushina saw the saddened look on his face. It's about Nikki, Mitsuomi adds. He puts out his cigarette with another blow of smoke. He's gone, Mitsuomi whispers. Kushina places Kali back on the ground. Did something happen, she asks. Mitsuomi slowly nods with a sigh. I'll show you, he says and touches their foreheads. The pair soon find themselves in front of a Gothic church and Mitsuomi pushes open the door. Kyubi. He shouts. The growling echoes as the pair enter, so both my jailer and former jailer grace me with their presence, a deep voice growls. At the end of a rope use and below an elevated throne was an elephant-sized Kyubi no Kitsune sans 7 tails, causing Kushina to furrow her brow. Minato sealed your soul and 1 tail's worth of chakra into Sachi. Why do you now have 2? Kushina said. Kyubi lifts off the floor, your daughters are to thank for that. I siphoned some of their excess chakra and Viola I now have 2 tails, the fox comments and Kushina glares. Kyubi, I need to show mom what happened to Aniki, Mitsuomi says. Kyubi huffs as smoke fills the church and from it emerges a young woman with red hair and slitted red eyes, dressed in a short red and white kimono, which extends to her mid-thigh, with a white nagajiban underneath. The sleeves of her kimono are wide with red arm warmers, a white obi and white with red trim boots. 2 red and black tip tails wave behind her and red fox ears on her head with 6 defined whiskers on her cheeks. I bet you didn't know I was female, did you, Kushina? She says and looks to Mitsuomi, though I despise your sperm donor and all his ilk save a few. I do care for you, kid, she adds. Kyubi raises her hand and fire raises to form a screen. Alright, Kushina gaze into the ether of his memory, she says. Flashback music. Restriction and pledge Hunter's Hunter. Mitsuomi was laying in his tent but suddenly awakes with a start and grabs a black Dido with a few links of chain from the hilt. Mitsuomi heads outside his tent as a mist was rolling in. Come out, whoever you are, he shouts. A man with dirty blonde hair and blue eyes in dark clothes steps out the mist, causing Mitsuomi to relax and lower his sword. Aniki, Mitsuomi says, and Shishio rubs his head. Did I wake you, Shishio says. Mitsuomi slowly approaches as Shishio looks at the stars. I've taught you everything I know, right, kiddo, he says and Mitsuomi nods. But I haven't taught you everything you need, Shishio adds. Shishio suddenly draws a white Dido exactly like Mitsuomi's Dido. What are you doing, Aniki? Mitsuomi shouts. Shishio points his sword with a serious look. Kiddo, you possess one of the 3 great doujutsu, but it isn't enough against a high-tier shinobi out there, he states. Your Sharingan is fully matured, but you need more, and I'm gonna give it to you, Shishio said and shot forward. Mitsuomi parries his strike. Are you crazy? He shouts and ducks a wide swipe. Mitsuomi blocks a heavy strike as Shishio forces him to one knee. Your goal is to fight Itachi one day and prove to Hokage-sama and everyone else. You're not a mistake. Then you need eyes like Itachi, Shishio shouts. Mitsuomi heaves Shishio back as his Sharingan subconsciously activates. No. I will not be like him and I won't let these eyes rule me, Mitsuomi shouts. Shishio charges again as the pair exchange swipes and parries. Listen to me. You need strength to go with that will you have. So kill me and gain the Mangekyo, he shouts. Mitsuomi kicks back with flickering eyes but tosses his sword on the ground. No. I will never fight you like this, he shouts. Shishio slashes Mitsuomi across the chest and kicks him his sword. Then you will die. He counters. Mitsuomi touches his bleeding chest as Shishio adopts an ox guard stance. Before long, Mitsuomi takes a Gatatsu stance. Mitsuomi thrusts forward, but Shishio parries his thrust and follow-up side-sweeping attack. I don't want to do this, Mitsuomi pleads, but Shishio presses. Oh yes, we are. Every day was to this possible end, Shishio shot into a furious exchange. Shishio cries out as Mitsuomi slashes his side, back and kicks out his legs, dropping him to his knees, but Mitsuomi halts his spin into a downward strike. "You would kill me," Shishio shouts. Mitsuomi stifles a choking sob. "No, I won't. I will not be like him," he shouts and turns to walk away. Shishio grabs his sword as a tear runs down his cheek. "This has to be done," he whispers. Shishio springs up and charges into another furious exchange, but Shishio shifts Mitsuomi's sword behind his head and his own sword crossed under Mitsuomi's. If you need a visual, look up Connor vs Duncan Highlander. "No, Nikki, stop. Not like this, stop," Mitsuomi shouts and tries to move them. "Mitsuomi," Shishio shouts, his eyes glowing and showing a pair of stars. Mitsuomi could see the look of determination Shishio's face as tears ran down his cheeks. "Goodbye, kiddo, my true brother," he says and pushes Mitsuomi with enough force. His head was severed from Mitsuomi's spin strike. Mitsuomi drops his sword as he suddenly grips his eyes. "Aniki," he howls as blood replaced tears. Mitsuomi falls to his knees as his Sharingan shifts to a starred pinwheel. Then song and flashback. Kushina covers her mouth as Mitsuomi sitting and his face buried in his hands. "I killed him, Mom. I killed your precious student," he cries. Kushina envelopes her son in a hug as he softly sobs. "Shishio was a good man, and his death wasn't your fault," she soothes. Mitsuomi softly sniffles as he pulls away and they return to the real world. Mitsuomi wipes his tears as Kushina stood next to him. "Thank you for telling me, Sachi," she says. I learned from Conan later that Iniki was dying, Mitsuomi whispers. Mitsuomi picks up Kali and she licks his cheek as Kushina gives him a side hug. Let's go back to the house, she says, as mother and son head back. Inari was standing outside as the trio returns. I'm sorry if I scared you, Inari, he says. I'm sorry too, but can you really beat Gado, Inari said, and Mitsuomi kneels to one knee. I promise Gado will fall, Mitsuomi replies. Inari suddenly hugs Mitsuomi with a few tears in her eyes. I sorry for growling, Kali says. Inari squats down and ruffles Kali's fur. Do you want to be friends, she asks, and Kali yips. The pair head off to the beach near the house as Mitsuomi and Kushina head inside. Naruto and Mito have concerned looks, but Mitsuomi waves his hand. I'm fine, you too, he says. You fight me, Sasuke suddenly interjects with his minion in tow. Mitsuomi stares incredulously at the roostery teen. Really, I'll ember back you, he shot. You can't beat Sasuke-kun, Sakura shouts. Mitsuomi arches an eyebrow, but a slight smirk forms. Alright then, I'm game. Let's step outside, he says. Sasuke adopts a roostery smirk as the group heads outside. Prepare to learn your place, he thought. Mitsuomi turns to face the Uchiha and suddenly flares his kai, causing Sakura to faint and a cold sweat to envelop Sasuke. No, it's like him, Sasuke thought. Mitsuomi's purple orbs bear a hole through Sasuke as he seems to loom over him. I have no time to teach a baby to breath, Mitsuomi coldly says, and cancels his kai. Mitsuomi turns and sees his mother gawking. Is something wrong, he asks. No, Sachi, it's just you sounded like my grandfather there for a minute, Kushina replies. Mitsuomi gives an eye smile as he rubs his head. Really, well, it just kinda came to me, he says. Mitsuomi strolls back Sasuke with a smirk that said I told you so as his sisters follow him. Darn him, I will make him pay, Sasuke thought. A week later. Team 7 move in a formation with Tazuna in the middle, and Mitsuomi was walking under the bridge, but his presence concealed. The group reaches the center of the bridge and find many of the workers unconscious as a thick mist greets them. HMM. Back for more copy, Ninja and I still owe the red hot habanero a funeral, a voice comments, seemingly everywhere. The Genin surround Tazuna as Kushina and Kakashi guard them. From the mist emerges Zabuza with his hunter nin. Raiga with 6 missing nin from Kiri and the Kiba blades hanging from his waist. Hand over the bridge builder and submit to a glorious funeral, Raiga declares. Though I hate to admit, but he's right. Save us the effort and hand over the old man, Zabuza said, as he and Raiga leak their kai. Zabuza chuckles seeing Sasuke shaking and trying to put up a roostery look. Looks like the boy is scared. Haku can cure him of his fear, he says, forming 6 Mizubunshin. I'm shaking with excitement, not fear, Sasuke sneers and charges with his Sharingan active, making short work of the Bunshin. Footsteps start to echo on the bridge as Haku was about to charge Sasuke. A glorious funeral, you say. Then how about a storm for your soon-to-be funeral, Raiga, a voice comments. A flicker of lightning appears as Mitsuomi slowly appears from the mist without his coat, but his mask on. Raiga starts laughing as Mitsuomi has his hands on his pockets. Ha, what a banner day, we meet again, Kiryu the White Storm. Where's the angel, Raiga shot. She didn't feel the need to involve herself with shameless murderers, Mitsuomi shot back. One of the former Kirinin steps forward. Raiga-sama, let me kill him, he sneers. Mitsuomi steps forward with a flick of his ear into a sprint as the ninja takes a Badojutsu stance, but Menma suddenly speeds up, drawing quickly. The sword meets Mitsuomi's bracer with a spark. The ninja swings again, but Mitsuomi adeptly dodges and drills a right straight to his face. A Kunoichi joins the fray, and Mitsuomi skids back to block with his bracer before sending a punishing roundhouse kick to her gut, and she crashes into the bridge. The first charges again, but Mitsuomi dodges nimbly and catches the ninja's arm between his chest and arm, squeezing and turning until it snaps and tossing the ninja into bridge as well. Enough, your fight is with me, and your funeral is long overdue, Raiga shouts. I agree. Haku, take the Genin. You lot go after the old man, Zabuza says, drawing his Kubikirabacho. The remaining nin charge the old man as Haku rushes forward. Zabuza disappears into the mist as Kakashi gives chase. Raiga draws the Kiba blades as Mitsuomi notices Raiga wasn't as bulky as their previous encounter. Where's the boy, Mitsuomi asks. Raiga's eyes narrow but a sneer forms. Ranmaru. I realized I no longer needed that dead weight. So I for rid of him and those curry owners, he sneers. Mitsuomi clenches his left fist but slowly open it as if holding a sheath. His right goes to draw an invisible sword and slowly pulls. Mitsuomi's black Daido emerges like a miniature storm effect as a smirk forms under his mask. So you took away the one advantage you had against me, he says. Lightning skates across the Kiba blades as Raiga overlaps both swords. I will give you a magnificent funeral, he says. Mitsuomi adopts his Gatatsu stance. Well, you know the joke. Maybe now you'll see the trick, he muses. Kakashi versus Zabuza like can enough said. Sasuke glares at Haku as Senbon riddle his body. Darn her, he hisses. Haku slowly slips out the ice mirror as a kunai strikes her mask, and Naruto appears with a downward kick after swapping with said kunai. Haku recovers as Naruto taps a seal on her forearm, and a Daido emerges. Haku fires several senbon as Naruto grips her sword, Futen. Gus Dance the blonde shouts, deflecting the senbon as she kicks back. Sasuke was glowering both as Naruto braces for Haku's barrage, Kaiten. Kakaku no jutsu he shouts, trying to incinerate both. Naruto dodges the flame as Haku retreats into a mirror, what the hell team? She shouts. Mito vs missing nin. The red-haired twin of Naruto stood in front of Tazuna and Sakura as the missing nin charged them, Suiten. Miserapa, she shouts. The blast of water erupts, but the missing nin leap to dodge, that won't work on us girly one shouts. I know Mito shouts, as golden chains erupt from her back and latch onto them. Mito slams them the ground as the chains drains their chakra until they are unconscious. Mito retracts her chains and creates 6 Kage Bunshin, I'm going help Naru. Guard Tazuna-san and Sakura as she orders. Right boss they said. Mito quickly heads to the dome mirrors as her twin was fighting nearly a 2-on-1 battle. Mito reaches the dome as her sister was narrowly dodging senbons from Haku as Sasuke saw her and a smirk formed. Suddenly Mito felt a rush of a subsmelanation as she was now inside the ice dome and Sasuke outside as he collapses, darn you Team Naruto shouts. Konan and Kuritsuchi vs Gado's minions. Konan stands on the roof of Tazuna's house as Inari and Kali were playing. Konan wears a light blue kimono and wide obi with wide sleeves to her mid-thigh, black shorts with mesh leggings, and a pair of ankle-length boots. Kuritsuchi is on the ground and is wearing a long-sleeve shirt, black flak vest with blue jean short shorts and white leggings, along with Kunoichi boots. The blue-hair Kunoichi soon senses a pair approaching from her shiki, Inari-chan. Kali-boo please go inside, she shouts. Both quickly enter the home as 2 men appear. One dressed in a dark purple hat on his head, the top of which extends far beyond the top of his head with a blue jacket with multiple pockets. The other wears what seems to be a loose-fitting kimono, albeit not in the traditional manner, as the top half of the outfit falls around his waist, leaving his upper body exposed, with bandages around his waist. Oh look Waraji, some hot chicks guarding the house, the first sneers. Waraji licks his lips in a lewd manner, maybe Gado will give us a turn Zori he sneers. Konan levels a deadly glare as paper starts to peel from her body, paper wings soon form from her lower half as she hovers. It's fluid like you deserve to die Konan hisses and raises her arms apart, angelic advent she shouts. Zori and Waraji had no time to react as paper tore through their bodies as Konan lands. Tsunami pokes her out with Inari clinging to her leg, Konan-san she asks. Everything is fine Tsunami-san please remain inside a little longer, Konan replies. Kuritsuchi flashes several signs and slams her hands on the ground, causing both men to sink under the ground. They can come out now Kuritsuchi says and Konan nods. Raiga vs Mitsuomi. The tension between the pair slowly rises as both slowly edge forward but maintain their distance. Mitsuomi took one step forward and then shot forward, causing Raiga to backpedal and block Mitsuomi's thrust. Well you're still sharp, Mitsuomi says. Raiga heaves Mitsuomi as lightning surges, Raiten. Raikyu he shouts and fires a ball of lightning. Mitsuomi blocks horizontally as ball makes contact with his Daido, but sends the ball upward with a swing. Raiga closes the gap quickly to thrust both swords, but Mitsuomi quickly lets go of his Daido, catching it with his right and sending a side-sweeping attack to block both. Raiga backpedals once again, but Mitsuomi closes the gap into a furious exchange as sparks fly. However Raiga notices Mitsuomi seamlessly switching between hands with his flurry of swings. Raiga takes the crossed stance with his sword, as Mitsuomi took an ox guard, I see now. The way you fight you're ambidextrous using Itoryu and Notoryu styles Raiga states. Oh very perceptive. Kirigakure no Raijin. You and I are the same Mitsuomi says and tosses right arm out as his white Daido appears from his right hand, I call these swords the Black Joker and White Trick he adds. Raiga maintains a cool facade, but inside, those swords are the work of Shakurai. The famous swordsmith of iron and said to had a hand in creating the 7 swords of mist he thought. Mitsuomi changes his stance with his trick horizontal and his joke vertical under the trick's hilt. Raiga sprints as Mitsuomi slowly moves into lightning fast exchange, ending in a test of strength between the 4 blades. Raiga's eyes narrow but slowly widen as white lightning skates along Mitsuomi's swords, white lightning impossible. Blue maybe or the black variation from the Sandaime Arakage and his apprentice Dari the black lightning Raiga thought. The pair break apart and kick back as Raiga drives his swords into the bridge, lightning burial. Banquet of lightning he shouts. Lightning erupts through the ground towards Mitsuomi, but he drives his swords in the concrete into a leap and a weave of signs. Heian. Hasenka no Jutsu Mitsuomi thought, firing multiple fireballs. Raiga grabs his swords and kicks back, Raiten. Raikyu, he counters. Lightning and fire met in a small explosion and dust cloud as Raiga skids to a halt, but shocked breath escapes his lips as Mitsuomi was behind him. "Right no your way," Raiga shouts, brings his swords together. An armor of lightning surrounds Raiga as Mitsuomi's palm made contact with his back. "Clever but not enough," Mitsuomi says, with a slight bat of his body. Raiga flies forward with the wind knocked out of him. "Darn it. Good thing for my armor," he thought, getting to one knee and coughing up some blood. Naruto and Mito vs Haku. The Namikaze twins were back-to-back sporting numerous Enban wounds, but their eyes showed their determination. Haku was all around them in her mirrors. "Please surrender. I do not wish harm you any further," she states. Naruto grips her sword as Mito readies her chains. "Nee. I might have a plan, but mom might get upset," she relays in twin speak. "What plan?" Naruto says and Mito pats her belly. Naruto's blue eyes widen, but a slight smirk forms with a nod as both slams their hands there together. Suddenly the wind picked up violently as both were covered by red chakra. Haku's eyes widen behind her mask as Kushina turns to Ice Stone. "My Musums," she thought. Sasuke was sweating bullets as Sakura had wet herself. Meanwhile Kakashi charges at bound Zabuza with his Rikiri, but halts. "Is this your doing?" Kakashi Zabuza shouts, but the copy nin shakes his head. "No, this is," Kakashi thought. Haku's eyes widen as cracks form in the ice mirror from the intense chakra of the twins. "Who are these girls?" she thought but adds. Suddenly Naruto slams a chakra enforced punch into Haku, sending her flying out the mirror and crashing to the ground. Music. Bleach Ost Fade to Black B13A. Mitsuomi approaches his swords as he feels the dense chakra. "Well, it's time I end this," he says and removes his mask, securing it to his belt. Raiga was back on his feet with his Raten no Yoroi surging. "I agree, White Storm. Time for your funeral," he says and brings his swords together. Mitsuomi spins his swords as lightning forms around them. "Then show me what you got," he says, shifting to a dual Batojutsu draw. Raiga charges forward as Mitsuomi swings, but using his Raten no Yoroi, dodges with a leap over the dual swing. Raiga brings both swords down. "Notoryu." Meguma he roars, pushing Mitsuomi back with a skid. Raiga presses into a furious rush as Mitsuomi backpedals, but blocking every strike. "Impressive, Raiga," but he says and vanishes. Raiga whips around as Mitsuomi was above him. "This is how it's done." "Notoryu." Meguma Mitsuomi shouts, swinging down. Raiga charges his Raten no Yoroi, but twin slashes open on his shoulders as Mitsuomi's blades crack the concrete. Raiga staggers back as Mitsuomi stares, but the purple eye shinobi dispels his black joker. "How about we end this?" Mitsuomi states. Raiga slowly raises his sword skyward as Mitsuomi stood at the ready. "Raten. Ryu no Tatsumaki," he shows. A dragon forms around Raiga with glowing red eyes and charges Menma. "Here's one dragon for another," Mitsuomi starts. Raten Kenjutsu. Dragonstrick Mitsuomi counters, swinging forward. A wailing and white lightning dragon with blue eyes charges the red-eyed dragon before swirling around each other skyward. The wailing dragon crushes the wind dragon and engulfs Raiga in white lightning. His screams drowned out the haunting wail. The light dies down as Raiga stood with his skin seared dark in spots and smoke wafting from his body. Raiga falls to his knees as Mitsuomi approaches and the Kiba blades clanging on the bridge before Mitsuomi's sword under Raiga's chin. "Tell me. It's been plaguing my mind since our first encounter. How were you able to counter Ranmara?" Raiga weakly asks. Mitsuomi closes his eyes and opens them, revealing his Sharingan, and Raiga wheezingly laughs before Mitsuomi decapitates him. Mitsuomi sighs heavily and cancels his Sharingan. "May you find peace as you perish," he thought, and dispels his sword. Song ends. XXX. Mitsuomi seals Raiga's head and swords before setting the body aflame, Sachi Kushina says. Mitsuomi turns and sees the astonished look on his mother's face. "Everyone okay?" he asks. The mist was clear, and the twins has Haku leaning on the railing, and Zabuza was clutching his bleeding limbs. Sasuke was glowering the trio, and Sakura was thoroughly emberback, but Mitsuomi's eyes narrow, seeing Gato and about 40 bandits. "You failed me again, Zabuza. I guess the mighty demon was just a baby." Gato sneers, but gives a lecherous look to Kushina and the others. Mitsuomi's eyes narrow and become slitted as he methodically marches forward, but Kushina grabs his shoulder. "Sachi. Let mama handle this," she says, her hair lifting and swaying. Mitsuomi relents his march as his mother steps forward. "Alright, but we'll be okay being so old," and all he playfully chides. Kushina scoffs and roosters her hip. "Please, I may have had 3 children, but I am still the deadliest Kunoichi in the world, save for your Bachan," she shot and draws her sword. Kushina shoots forward with blinding speed towards Gato's troops, causing Gato run through them in fear. Her Gato screams, running away, but falls on his rear as Mitsuomi appears in front of him. Mitsuomi reaches out and Gato screams in agony as lightning erupts from his body. "He killed our meal ticket. Get him," one bandit shouts. Mitsuomi shoots out his arm to summon his trick, Itoryu. Sanjiroku pound ho, he shouts and swings forward, cutting down the bandits. The remaining bandits back away but turn to see Kushina bearing down on them before they leapt off the bridge in horror. Kushina flicks the blood of her sword and sheathes it. Well, that was a bit anticlimactic, she says. Mitsuomi nai-san. A voice shouts. Kushina sees Inari and villagers with various weapons, but they gasp seeing Gado's corpse. Gado is dead, we're free, several shout. Mitsuomi kneels to Inari. See, told you Gado would fall, he says, and Inari hugs him. 2 weeks later. Team 7 as well as Mitsuomi, Kuritsuchi and Konan stood before the now complete Great Namikaze Bridge. Haku and Zabuza left the previous day to join the rebellion in freeing Kiri from the bloodline purges. Tazuna, Tsunami and Inari were saying their goodbyes. Promise you'll come visit, Inari asks. Naruko ruffles her hair with a cheeky smile. Sure, and we'll bring Mitsunai, she says. Thank you so much for freeing our country. I promise to pay full amount soon, Tazuna said. Kushina waves her hand. No problem. Minato will allow you to make payments or even forego the rest, she says. Tazuna gasps and takes Kushina by the hand. Thank you. Thank you, he cries. Mitsuomi was off to the side with Kali in his vest and relaying his message to Abunshin. Nai Mito asks and Mitsuomi glances her way. Would you mind asking Konan-san to teach me some Suiton jutsu, she adds. Of course, Mito-chan. As your soon-to-be sister-in-law. Once he actually proposes. It would be an honor to teach you the Suiton jutsu. He can even teach Naruko-chan some Raiten, Konan says, and Mitsuomi puffs his cheeks as Kuritsuchi giggles. Sachi. Kuritsuchi-chan. Konan-chan, Kushina shouts and Mitsuomi waves as the Bunshin vanishes. At same time Sasuke was glaring at Mitsuomi. No one makes me look weak. I'll tell the council to make him hand everything he has and his women to repopulate my clan, then have him killed, he thought. The group left amid cheers as they made their way back to Konoha. Kushina moves next Mitsuomi as they take to the trees. Sachi, how many people know you're back in Konoha other than Minato, she asks. Yugao and the Onbu guarding him. Jiji and Maiko Abasan. I wore my mask outside my apartment, Mitsuomi replies. Kushina gives him a rueful look and Mitsuomi sighs. But I might come back and live in the compound, he says, and Kushina perks up. However, knowing the council well, the civilians and elders. They know I'm back in Konoha. So staying at the compound would be beneficial, Mitsuomi adds, but thought, especially with Yujito coming, he thought. 2 days later Team 7 and their backup reaches the gates of Konoha. True to his words, Onbu Nico was waiting. Please follow me. The council wishes your presence, she states. The council of Konoha was divided into 3 parts, its shinobi side, civilian and advisory sides. The shinobi side is comprised of the great clans of Konoha, Aburam, Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Ichiha, Hyuga, Kurama, Uzumaki, Sarutobi and Senju. The civilian side was made up of wealthy merchants, and most notably Mabuki Haruno. Its advisory side was comprised of Danzo Shimura, Kaharu Utatane, Hamuura Midokado and Sarutobi Hiruzen. Minato sits at the center of a U-shaped table awaiting Team 7 and Mitsuomi. Slowly the doors opened revealing the team and Mitsuomi, but next to him were 2 cloaked figures. I apologize for the short notice after just arriving back from a mission, but the council had some concerns, Minato states. Kushina silently scoffs and rolls her eyes. And what is the concern, she asks. The concern is that Dem. It is back in the village, Mabuki screeches. Mitsuomi slowly removes his hood and mask with a shake of his head. It seems you couldn't keep my secret, Hokage-sama, but by no fault on your part. It's those who have their greedy fingers where they don't belong, he says. Several civilian members whisper curses about Mitsuomi, but Kushina releases her kai to silence them. Hokage-sama, to allow this boy to backociate with Sasuke-sama is detrimental to his training, Kaharu says. In what way, Kaharu-san, Minato asks. Mitsuomi rubs the side of his head. She believes I'm a taint to everyone around me because of my special circumstances, Hokage-sama, he says. Boy, who is the person next to you, Danzo interjects. Mitsuomi slightly glares at the older man. These are my partners and lovers, Konan and Kuritsuchi, he replies. They should be given to Sasuke-kun, Mabuki shouts. Sasuke nods with a smirk and a roostery stance. I agree and I want everything he owns, he sneers. Mitsuomi turns to Sasuke with a cold look on his face and the younger flinches. Do I need to repeat myself as I did in Wave, he said. The civilian side were horrified by Mitsuomi's tone, but the shinobi side were impressed except for Hiashi. Hokage-sama, I have request or a challenge. If you'll hear it, Mitsuomi says and Minato furrows his brow but nods. The Chunin exams will take place in 1 month's time. How about I compete in the exams, Mitsuomi says, and the civilians again cause a ruckus but Minato raises his hand. If as a Ronin it could be allowed but you don't have a team, Minato says. All true, but how about a wager to appease the council, Mitsuomi says and pauses. I can compete in the Chunin exams alone, he declares. Kushina and the twins gasp in shock, but Mitsuomi raises a single finger. Should I make it to the Chunin finals and do well? You agree to several terms, no questions asked, he says, and holds up a second finger. If I fail to make it, I will be banished from Konoha and Hai no Kuni. Also be stripped of my status as soon to be head of the Uzumaki clan, Mitsuomi adds. The council room was silent as the civilians were liking the idea, but Minato could only stare. Mitsuomi, he starts and calms himself. I agree to your terms, but you'll need a Jonin sensei to qualify, and you do fully understand the ramifications of this, he says. Mitsuomi bows deeply with a nod. I do, Hokage-sama, and it's high time the people of Konoha and this council understand just who the heck I am, he states, turning on his heels with a flap of his coat. Mitsuomi, if you like I can be your Jonin sensei, a voice says. Everyone sees Mikoto rise from her seat. Then I look forward to your guidance, Mikoto sensei, Mitsuomi says, leaving with Konan and Kuretsuchi in tow. Minato dismisses the council, and he knows it will be a matter of time before the whole village knew Mitsuomi had returned. Minato, what were you thinking? Kushina shouts. Minato sighs heavily and glances to his daughters, and both have teared up faces. I'm sorry, but you know council, he says. Darn the council. Our son could lose his birthright, Kushina said, but a cold look forms. I'm sorry. My son could lose his birthright, she adds. Minato rubs his forehead at Kushina's tone, but the Sandaime clears his throat. Kushina-chan. Tell me, do you know how strong Mitsuomi-kun has become? Here's in comments. Kushina remembers the battle on the bridge, Jiji, but will it be enough? They'll be targeted from outside forces and inside, she replies. Trust him, Kushina. I've seen his skills and the village will learn just who he is, Hiruzen states. XXX. Mitsuomi walks through the village with a quickened pace, but he could feel two pairs of eyes on him. What? He said. I know you're annoyed, but this isn't out of what you thought, Kuretsuchi says. Mitsuomi grasps their shoulders and shunshions them to his apartment. You're right. You saw those sycophant civilians and elders, he said, and unlocks the door. The sound of a shower catch their ears and the clone in a chair, before promptly dispelling as the shower stops. Someone is already enjoying themselves, Conan notes. The door opens with a billow of steam as out comes a young woman in short shorts and a towel forced on her shoulders, obscuring her C-cup melons, pixie dirty blonde hair and dark violet eyes. About time, the girl said. Mitsuomi rubs his mouth with a soft smile. Hello, Yujito, he says. Yujito smiles warmly and glumps her boyfriend. Hey, Mitsu-bear. Ko-chan. Kuro-chan, she says and bends down. Kali-boo, she croons, picking up the tiger. Kali purrs and rubs her head on Yujito's cheek. I missed you, Ni-san, she says. Hello, Yujito, any trouble getting into the village? Conan said. Yujito puts Kali on the floor and slips on a shirt with a shake of her head. Nope, she says. Mitsuomi creates 3 Kage Bunshin. We got a problem. It went as I thought. So I'm going into the exams alone, he says. Are you insane? Yujito shouts. Mitsuomi plops in a chair as his clones pack and Yujito kneels in front of him. Kumo and Iwa are definitely gonna be gunning for you, for me and Kuro. Kiri might once they hear you killed Raiga and took the Kiba blades. Then this place, she said. Mitsuomi gives her a soft smile. I'll be fine. Now pack up, we're heading to the Namikaze estate, he says. Why, Yujito said, picking up Kali. Mitsuomi rises from his chair with a sigh, because very soon the village will know I'm back and I want you 3 to be safe, he explains. Yujito and Kuretsuchi softly smile and Conan places Kali in Mitsuomi's vest. Alright, I'll slip on my cloak and mask, Yujito says. Yujito slips on a grey cloak like Conan and Kuretsuchi, also a mask with intricate designs, but half black and half white with blacked out eyes. The foursome grab their things as Mitsuomi shifts Kali in his vest. Where are we going now, Nai-san, she asks. We're going stay with my mom and sisters, Mitsuomi says. The clones hand Mitsuomi 2 scrolls and promptly dispel as he places the keys on the table. Let's go, he says, as they file out. The landlord was coming up the steps as the 4 step out. Ah, perfect, I was coming to let you know that. I must unfortunately terminate your lease, he says. Fine by me, I was leaving. I heard a demon lived here anyway, Mitsuomi shot and all 4 vanish. Moments later the 4 were standing in front of the Namikaze compound. Is that really how those people act, Yujito asks. They do, and that's why I'm coming here, Mitsuomi says and touches the gate. The gate opens and the 4 step in as Kushina rushes out the house but halts. Sachi. She shouts. Yeah, I guess my chakra is still ingrained in the jutsu, otherwise it wouldn't open, Mitsuomi said, pulling Kali from his vest. The little tiger was in awe and starts running around the grounds as Kushina spies Yujito. I'm Yujito Nai and I'm your son's other girlfriend, Yujito says, removing her mask into a bow. Kushina's purple orbs light up but dim because she may not see her grandchildren if Mitsuomi doesn't do well enough. Mom, don't worry, Dadabasa, he says, tapping his bicep. "That right, you're my son Dadabing," Kushina chirps and picks up Kali as she snuggles her leg. "Come in, we have plenty of room," she adds. The four follow Kushina, but old memories resurface for Mitsuomi, many nights coming home from a beating or a day of glares and ignorance. Naruto and Mito were in the living room with Minato as the five enter. "Nai nai. Mitsu nai," both said. Minato gives Mitsuomi a curt nod and he reciprocates. "I believe this makes three," Minato says. "I'm Yujito Nai and it's honor to meet you, Yandayame-sama," Yujito greets. Mitsuomi creates two bunshin. "Take our stuff to the guest wing," he says, removing his cloak, as does Yujito, Kuretsuchi and Konan. "Please sit and tell us about yourselves," Minato asks. Yujito glances to Mitsuomi and takes his hand. "Well, my story is where things get complicated, and not just us, but possibly Konoha too," she starts. Minato furrows his brow, as does Kushina. "In what regard?" she asks. "Well, I'm the Jinchuriki of Nibi no Nakamata." Matatabi, Yujito states and squeezes Mitsuomi's hand more. "I'm originally from Kumo. I was given Matatabi when I was a year old. I was raised by Kumo's council to be their weapon, and I had the seals to prove it. About 2 years ago Mitsuomi came to collect on the bounty for Oram the Bolt. Sama was glad that he stopped him, but the council wasn't. I was sent to kill him when he backed Kumo's borders. We fought and he actually kept me from going full transform," Yujito explains. "You can fully utilize your Biju?" Minato asks. Yujito slowly nods with a soft look in her eyes. "Yes, Killer B-sama taught me how. Mitsuomi defeated me, and I fully expected to die," she says, but a tear forms. "But Mitsuomi broke the seals and saved me from a life of slavery. After the battle he sent an encrypted message to Asama about me, but received no reply. So I believe once word gets out that Mitsuomi is back in Konoha, a team or two from Kumo will be looking for me or want revenge on him," Yujito said. "I'm in the same boat as Kitty Cat. My full name is Kuretsuchi Kamizuru, and that makes my gramps Inoki Kamizuru the Sandayame Tsuchikage," Kuretsuchi starts, shocking them. "My gramps let others get into his head. Mainly my fluid bag uncle. He never saw me as his niece but as a tool. I possess the Yotenkeke Genkai, and once the current Yonbi Jinchuriki got old, I would have been used, but my dad Katsuchi got me out of the village. I met Mitsuomi and the others about 4 years ago, and the rest is history," Kuretsuchi finishes. Minato leans back in his chair with frown, but it shifts into a thinking look on his face. "Do you believe Kumo would declare war for you, Yujito-san, or Iwa for you, Kuretsuchi-san?" he asks. "Asama no, but the council could push to have their pet back," Yujito said. "My gramps would be weary to face the Kairoi Senko in battle again, but my uncle. Who the heck knows?" Kuretsuchi says. Kushina shook her head. "Yujito is a former Jinchuriki. I know the hardship of that life and my children know it, especially my Sachi. I swear on the honor of the Uzumaki clan I'll protect you," she said. "Us too," Naruto said, and Mito nods. "I will as well as Hokage. I can't turn a blind eye to the suffering of others," Minato says. Yujito bows deeply as Mitsuomi gives a silent scoff. "Thank you, Yandayame-sama and everyone," she says, and Kuretsuchi bows as well. "Then where were you when Kit suffered?" Kyubi comments. Mitsuomi rubs his bandaged arm with a soft groan. "Mom, do know if Granny Tsunade is at the Senju compound or the hospital?" he asks. "Probably backed out somewhere," Naruto says, but Mito pops her. "Why nai?" Mito asks. "Well, I need her to look at my arm. Plus Konan wants to learn some medical ninjutsu," Mitsuomi said. Yujito looks at Konan with a cheeky look and Kuretsuchi snorts. "Plus she a huge fan," Yujito chides and Konan glares, causing a stare-off between the pair. "No fighting," Mitsuomi says, and both stop. "It's been a trying day. Why don't we all get some rest?" Kushina said. Mitsuomi rises from his seat as do Konan and the others. "Sounds good. Naruto, you wanna come with me tomorrow, and Konan can show Mito some suit and jutsu," he says. "I can show spar with her as well," Yujito adds and Kuretsuchi nods. The twins hug their brother as everyone heads off to leave husband and wife. He's grown into a fine young man. "I'm ashamed I missed so much of his life over things not of his making," Minato says. Kushina kisses his temple with a soft look, "Then I pray he succeeds." "I don't think I could bear to lose him again," she whispers, and Minato holds her. XXX. The next day Mitsuomi with Naruto and Kali riding his vest were walking through the village towards Konoha General. "So why do need see Bachan?" she asks. Mitsuomi raises his bandaged arm. "A few months ago, I tangled with a shady clan of shinobi, and I got injured. Konan knows the basics. So I need her to give me a full exam," he explains. "Then you'll teach me some Raiten Jutsu?" Naruto asks, and Mitsuomi pats her head. "Of course, but we need stop by the Forest of Death so Kali can't see her siblings," Mitsuomi replies. "Why there?" Naruto asks. Mitsuomi rubs Kali on the head and she purrs. Kali is actually a summon animal of the Tiger clan and a few live in the forest, he says. "I thought Kyubi was helping her talk, but she's a summon." "Cool," Naruto says. The pair fell into silence as Mitsuomi notices a few dirty looks from people. That didn't take long, he thought. Naruko starts to notice them as her brother was quiet and was about to say something. It's alright sis. They can't touch me now, Mitsuomi says. Back a food vendor with fresh apples. Oh Naruko-sama, good morning to you, the woman greets. Naruko pulls Mitsuomi towards the vendor and grabs an apple, but her blue orbs see the cold look the woman gives her brother. Mitsunai, want one, she asks. Sure, Mitsuomi says and reaches for one. Oh, these aren't fresh, the woman says, with a fake smile. Naruko's eyes narrow and a blank look forms. Oh, I see, well, we'll go elsewhere, she says and pulls Mitsuomi along. I told you it's alright, Mitsuomi back yours, but Naruko shakes her head. No, it's not, you're my brother, Naruko says. The pair reach the hospital as Kali wakes from her nap in his vest and shakes her head. Welcome, how may I help you, a nurse greets but blushes. Mitsuomi give her a warm smile, but the nurse was staring at Kali instead of him. We're here to see Bach-chan, Naruko says, stifling a giggle. The nurse blinks and looks up. Oh, Tsunade-sama is finishing her morning rounds and should be in her office on the 7th floor, she said, petting Kali. Kali purrs as Mitsuomi smiles. Thank you, ma'am, he says, as they head for the elevator. Thank you, Kali says, and the nurse blinks. Did she talk, she muses. Mitsuomi and Naruko soon steps off the elevator and head down the hall. I bet she's backed out at her desk, Naruko muses. Mitsuomi knocks twice and slowly opens the door as Tsunade was in fact asleep at her desk. Told you, the blonde shot. Mitsuomi pulls Kali and places her on the desk. Okay, do your thing, he says. Kali rubs against Tsunade with loud purring, waking the pigtail blonde from her seat. Tsunade mumbles and sees the small tiger and two people standing and her eyes widen at one. Mitsuomi, she said. Hi, it's been Granny Tsunade, Mitsuomi said. Tsunade comes around the desk to hug her surrogate grandson. I'll say kid 10 years, she says, and Mitsuomi nods. So why are here? I'm sure Kushina must be thrilled to have you back, Tsunade said. Mitsuomi holds up his bandaged arm. I need the greatest medic, he adds. Tsunade's honey eyes narrow. Alright, follow me, and you too, Gaki. You can observe, she says. Mitsuomi follows Tsunade to an exam room as Naruko holds Kali. How bad, Tsunade asks. About 4 months ago. I had a run-in with the Black Spider clan, Mitsuomi starts. Tsunade opens the door and motions for him to sit. I've heard of them. They've been a thorn in the side of hot water country, she said. Mitsuomi slips off his shirt, vest and glove, revealing his various other scars, and places his hand on the bandages. They loosen and fall to the floor as Naruko gasps loudly. Mitsunai. She say, shuddering. Tsunade was looking with a medical eye as she checks his skin. Acid cloud or acidic water? It seems sulfuric in nature, she asks, moving his fingers. A bit of both, a jutsu called acid storm, Mitsuomi said. Naruko was watching behind her brother, and the burn encompassed his left arm and a few small spots on his side. A jutsu did all that, she whispers. I have spots on my leg as well, but my arm took the brunt of it. I was saving someone at the time, Mitsuomi replies. Tsunade activates her mystic palm technique and runs it along Mitsuomi's arm. You seem to be healing alright, but you probably worried the acid seeped into your muscle tissue, she asks. Yeah. Konan did most of the aftercare, and that was her biggest concern, Mitsuomi replies, and Tsunade arches an eyebrow. Then I'd like to meet her. She's got some skill, Tsunade comments, and Menma nods. Tsunade finishes her diagnosis and jots a few things down. Well, you do have some acidic residue in your muscles, and if you're willed to be a guinea pig. I let your friend remove it with a few students including your sisters as a teaching exercise, she states. Mitsuomi redresses his arm using chakra strings. I don't mind. I was gonna ask you show Konan some stuff anyway, he says, slipping his shirt, vest and glove back on. Alright, I'll set it up for Saturday, Tsunade comments, and Mitsuomi nods. Sure. Hey sis, wanna get some ramen, Mitsuomi adds. Naruko had been quiet the entire time and buries her face in his chest. SHH, I'm alright, Mitsuomi soothes. He's right, his girlfriend took amazing care of him. Except for the scars, the damage is minimal, Tsunade said. Naruko pulls away and wipes her tears. I know, but you have to do the Chunin exams alone, and you're injured, she whispers. What, you're taking the exams alone? Tsunade shouts. Menma rubs his forehead with a sigh and explains what Tsunade missed at the council meeting. A scowl formed of Tsunade's face. Stupid council and stupid Minato for letting them walk all over him. This should have been a clan issue, not civilian, she comments. Mitsuomi picks Kali up with a sigh. It won't matter. I'll show him and the village what I can really do, he says. You better, kiddo, and I'll see you Saturday, Tsunade said, kissing his forehead. Mitsuomi and Naruko excuse themselves as Tsunade heads back to office. Tsunade-sama, was that Shizune asks. Yep, that was him alright, Tsunade says, and Shizune slowly nods. Welcome home, Shizune thought. XXX. Banko Mitarashi was having a slightly good day after gorging on dango and torturing prisoners. However, something had been nagging her for at least a week or two, and it ramped up as several drunken villagers at the bar on the previous night said the Kyuubi brat was back. Anko knew better than to believe rumors and wanted to speak to the only person who would, however her suspicions were confirmed as a pair enter Ichiraku ramen. No hecking way, Anko thought. At the same time Tucci was wiping the counter. "Gigi, I need ramen stat," Naruko shouts. Tucci looks up with a smile, but his eyes widen. "Mitsuomi," he says. Mitsuomi gives him a wave as they sit down. "Hey old man Tucci," he says. AM comes from the back and her eyes widen too, and breath hitched. "Mitsuomi," she shouts. "Hey AM." Mitsuomi and AM comes around the counter to hug him. Anko watches from the shadows with slight smirk but vanishes. "Okay old man, 12 bowls of miso ramen for me and 12 for my sis, her choice," Mitsuomi says and places Kali on the counter, "and some beef pieces for her," he adds. AM squeals and pets Kali as the little tiger purrs. "She's so cute." "Where'd you get her?" she asks. Kali sits on her haunches. "I'm a summon aminal, and when I get big, I'll be like my brother Liger," she says, and AM squeals again before helping out her father. Several people enter the shop but see Mitsuomi and left. "That's right, my favorite customer is back," Tucci shouts. Mitsuomi curtly nods as he slurps down his 5th bowl. "Thanks old man," he tries to say with his mouth full. Naruko glances back with a mouth full of noodle. "Iruka-sensei," she garbles. Iruka waves as he enters the shop. "Hello Naruko," he greets. "Iruka-sensei, meet my big brother Mitsuomi," Naruko says. Mitsuomi gives Iruka a nod and Iruka reciprocates. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Iruka says. "Likewise, Naruko told me you were her academy teacher, and I apologize for what she put you through." Mitsuomi and Naruko puffs her cheeks with a punch. Iruka waves his hand with a sweat drop. No, it was quite alright. She and Mito were good students and I'm proud of them," he says. Mitsuomi smiles warmly and ruffles Naruko's blonde locks. "I am too," he muses. The pair finished their meal and thank Tucci and AM. "Alright to the forest of death," Mitsuomi says, but decides to quicken the pace, and Reiten shunshions them to the main gate. "You gotta teach me that too," Naruko says. Mitsuomi takes a step forward and suddenly catches a kunai, "So the rumors are true," a voice comments. Anko lands in front the gate with a slight smirk, but eeps and narrowly dodges a lightning-infused kunai. "And you're still naughty. Proper naughty Koko," Mitsuomi says. Anko giggles as she saunters up to him to poke his chest, "And I outrank ya," she croons but hugs him. "I've missed you," she says. "I've missed you too, Anko, but only for now," Mitsuomi says, and Kali pop out. "Hello," she greets. Anko backs up as Naruko laughs. "She's a summon," Naruko said. "Oh. So I have come to my playground," Anko declares, arms apart. Mitsuomi points down to Kali. "Some of her clan reside here," he replies. Anko furrows her brow with a thinking pose. "Alright, I'll let you in, but I'm coming with so we can catch up," she says, poking Mitsuomi's chest. The 3+ tiger leap over the gate and tree hop west. "Naruko, how far are you with your Reiten training?" Mitsuomi asks. "Mom and Kakashi-sensei taught me how to crumble the leaf with Reiten, but they mainly focused on feud," Naruko replies. Mitsuomi rubs his chin, then holds up a light bulb and both to gawk. "Where did get that?" Naruko asks. "Muffin button," Mitsuomi curtly replies and both sweat drop. "Anyway, the next step to power a light bulb continuously for 10 minutes with Reiten," he adds. The trio land in a decent size clearing, and Mitsuomi lets Kali down. "Alright. Announce your return," he says. Kali walks about 2 feet and lets out the loudest roar she can muster, before sitting on her haunches, and a series of roars echo. Naruko and Anko get on guard, but Mitsuomi points, as from the tree line 2 normal-size white tigers emerge. An elephant-size white female Bengal tiger follows with 3 small tigers. Kali immediately rushes the 3 smaller ones into a mock battle. The Bengal approaches Menma and plops down. "It's been a while, White Blaze," Mitsuomi says. "Arg, too long." Liger misses you, White Blaze comments and spies the others. "I don't bite much," she adds. Naruko slowly approaches as does Anko. "Hello, I'm Naruko and I'm Anko," they said in tandem. White Blaze chuckles deeply as Kali approaches. "Mama," she says, and they nuzzle noses, still riding with him, how White Blaze notes. Mitsuomi chuckles softly as he rubs his ear. "I don't mind. Besides, it makes her feel tall," he muses. Kali went back to playing with her smaller siblings as Mitsuomi approaches Naruko. "How's it coming?" he asks. "Arg, it's hard," Naruko huffs. Mitsuomi squats next to her as Anko was sitting in a tree. "Futen is your stronger affinity, so it'll be harder, but I'm sure a future Hokage can do it," he muses. "Of course, Dadabayo," Naruko shouts. Mitsuomi rubs under his nose with a small laugh. "Exactly," he says and walks up the tree, taking a seat next to Anko. "So it's been 10 years since we've seen each other, and you're a Takebetsu Jonin now," Mitsuomi says. Anko scoffs and puffs out her chest. "Yep, and you're a merc," she says, but a rueful look forms. "I'd wish you'd been here," she whispers. Mitsuomi furrows his brow, and Anko pulls her mesh shirt to reveal her curse mark. My idiot of a sensei did this and abandoned me, she whispers. Mitsuomi clenches his fist and lightning forms. Did you show my mom, he asks. She said it was incomplete and she's working on trying to break it, but it's low going, Anko replies. Mitsuomi pulls Anko into a hug and she holds him tight. Don't tell anyone about this, or I'll castrate you, she says. And my girlfriends would destroy you, Menma says, and Anko scoffs. Will that include me, Anko asks. Mitsuomi leans back on the tree. Sure, but you'll have share me with 3 more, and are really hot, he says, and Anko punches his shoulder. They better be, Anko shot. XXX. Sasuke glares at his mother from his spot at the table. Why, he said. Mikoto looks up with a confused look on her face. Why, what, she asks. Sasuke slams his fist with a scowl. Why are you his sensei? He shouts. Mikoto places her fork down with a serious look. I am a jonin of this village, and I'm allowed to teach whoever I choose, she states. But why him? Sasuke shouts, shooting from his seat. Mikoto blinks lightly and rises from her seat. Sasuke, I don't know what you have against Mitsuomi, but I will be his sensei whether you like it or don't, she says. The doorbell rings to stop Sasuke's retort and he storms off to his room. Mikoto answers the door and Mitsuomi was standing at the doorway. Mitsuomi, she asks. Actually, I'm Akage Bunshin. Menma wanted to inform you that he's currently in training ground 44 with Naruto and Anko. If you need him for anything, I will relay the message, the clone says. Mikoto rubs her chin for a moment. Well, have him meet me at training ground 33 at 2, she replies. The clone salutes and promptly vanishes with no smoke, amazing, a lot like Shisui, she muses. Sasuke watches from a window. I will have my vengeance, he thought. Mikoto went back inside and got dressed in her jonin uniform and tied her hair in a single bun with hair needles. Mikoto decides to pay Kushina a visit and reaches the Namikaze compound as Minato was leaving, before exchanging greetings as she enters. Mikoto spies Kushina watching Mito perform a jutsu and 2 young women observing the younger deed. Suiton. Teppadama, Mito shouts, as the blonde dodges. Kushina sees Mikoto approaches and waves. Hey Miko-chan, she says. Hello Kushina, how are you today, Mikoto asks. Things are good. My children are back together and the prospect of grandchildren is high. My Sachi has 3 girlfriends and a possible 4th with Anko-chan, Kushina says, but a saddened look forms, that is if he does well in the Chunin exams, she adds. Mikoto places a comforting hand on Kushina's shoulder. Mitsuomi will be fine. He's your son, she said. Mikoto Abasan is right, Nai is strong. I know he can do it, Mito said, approaching. Yujito was soaking wet with Konan maintaining a stoic face, but failing and Kuretsuchi laughing. Mikoto looks over the 3 and bows. Hello, I'm Mikoto Uchiha, and I would be Mitsuomi's jonin sensei to allow him to compete, she greets. I'm Konan, no family name. This is Kuretsuchi Kamizuru, and the wet feline is Yujito Nai, Konan says, and Yujito hisses like a cat. Whatever, I'm going take a shower and Mito, good work today, Yujito says and heads to the house. I agree. You have a very good affinity for Suiton, Konan says and Mito blushes. She almost matches her brother in terms of affinity, Kuretsuchi says. I hope to match the Nidayume someday, Mito replies. That's a lofty goal, Mikoto comments and Kushina claps her hands. Why don't we take a break? Mito leaves some Bunshin to work on your control, Kushina states. Mito made about 50 clones as the group heads inside for a much needed break. XXX. Meanwhile, Naruto was surrounded by 100 clones, each with bulb and trying to complete their exercise. Mitsuomi was laying on his stomach next her with Kali and her siblings on his back, with Anko off on a patrol with the twins. So you actually liberated a country and you know Princess Gale, Naruto asks, incredulously. Mitsuomi nods with a drag on his cigarette. We actually lucked out meeting Koyuki, and Aniki insisted it was a good test for me and Konan. Well, especially her due to her Hyoten, and I copied several jutsu and can do several combination jutsu with her, he explains. Naruto dispels several clones and groans from the overload. So what will you do with the Kiba blade, she asks. If Kiri comes to the exams, I'll give it back to them. I don't need the excess drama, Mitsuomi replies. White Blaze chuckles deeply. You thrive on excess drama, kiddo, she notes. True, but I'm back with my family and I gotta be on my P's and Q's lest the council pull some nonsense, Mitsuomi states, moving and the cubs falling off. Mitsuomi cracks his back and joints. Let's head back, I gotta meet Mikoto Abasan in an hour, he says. Naruto dispels her remaining clones and pops her stiff joints too. It was nice meeting you, White Blaze, she says, picking up Kali. Not a problem, kitten, and if you get tired of summoning toads, we can use another summoner, White Blaze says, as her and the cubs dispel. I'll have to think about that, Naruto muses, as the pair take to the trees. Mitsuomi and Naruto soon exit the woods and Kali leaps on Naruto's head. I see you later and keep practicing, he says and vanishes. XXX. Mitsuomi arrives at the training ground and caught sight of Mikoto with Yujito, Kuretsuchi and Konan. Mikoto waves him over as they sit on a pair of fallen trees. "Well, I would like see your skill set." "I only have Kushina's word," she says. Mitsuomi rises from his spot with a slight look. "Well, I have 3 affinities, but my rating is strong." "How about I show this," he says and holds his index fingers close together. Soon lightning sparks and surges as he pulls his hands apart. Amazing his control is, for lack of better term, inhuman, Mikoto thought, seeing white lightning skating around Mitsuomi's body. In the trees, Sasuke watches with searing anger as Mitsuomi stops and plops back down. "You continue to annoy the boy off," Kyuubi notes. "Amazing," Mikoto says and taps under her right eye. "And has this matured and did it evolve?" she adds. Mitsuomi sighs with a nod. "Fully and evolved to evoke the storm god," he says. Mikoto's eyes widen, but she calms down. "Are you positive?" she asks and Mitsuomi nods. "I see. Well, since obviously Mitsuomi has the Chunin exam soon, I'll focus on working with your Sharingan and testing it out with their help," Mikoto states. "We'll have limit what we can show around others," Kuretsuchi says and Konan nods. "Especially our true skills. Some would run to your council to have them given said techniques," Konan adds. Mikoto sighs softly with a look to the sky. "I agree. Well, let's dismiss for the day," she says. All 4 rise and bow as Mikoto flame shunshuns away. "She's nice compared to her son," Konan notes. "She's my godmother after all," Mitsuomi says and lights a strawberry cigarette. "How did Mito do today?" he adds. Yujito scoffs as they walk to the compound. "She's good. I bet she's the level-headed twin," she says. "I would agree. Mito is quite the Kunoichi and Naruto," Konan asks. Mitsuomi blows a puff of smoke, a bit brash, "but she can do it," he says and taps his palm. "Oh, I have 4th girlfriend now," he says. "Who?" The 3 shout and Mitsuomi glances back. "Anko Mitarashi," Mitsuomi replies. "Who?" Yujito asks. Mitsuomi puts out his cigarette in his glove and was about to say something when a huge plume of smoke erupts and from it emerges the lady in question. "Anko Mitarashi. Ultra Banana Pichisi Takibetsu Jonan," Anko declares. Konan stares blankly, but Yujito and Kuretsuchi were laughing. "Hahaha, I like her already." "Welcome to the harem," Yujito shouts. Mitsuomi's eyes widen with a shocked intake of breath, and Konan rubs her forehead. "It's a pleasure, Mitarashi-san," she says. "Likewise, and you're right, they're hot," Anko comments. Konan gives Mitsuomi a look and he sighs in defeat. "How was the patrol with the twins?" he asks, as they continue on. "But those 2 come in handy," Anko comments, biting a piece of dango. Several of villagers see them and whisper, but the 5 ignore them. "So have you all hecked yet?" Anko asks. "Konan and Kuro are virgins, but Menma and I have hecked once," Yujito says, not missing a beat. A cloud forms over Mitsuomi's head and Konan rubs his bandaged arm. "Well, excuse me for wanting to be traditional," Konan says and Kuretsuchi nods, but Yujito waves her hand. "Just teasing. Besides, our one time was because of our tenants," Yujito says and whispers tenants as they continue through the village. XXX. Naruto arrives home with Kali in her arms as she spies her sister's Bunshin going through various things. The blonde heads inside as her twin was on the sofa sleeping, causing Kali to wiggle out and climb onto Mito. Naruto giggles as she plops on the other sofa and practiced with her light bulb. "Where's Nai Nai?" Mito yawns. "Meeting Mikoto Abbas," and Naruto replies. Mito shifts on her side as Kali rolls onto the sofa with a playful growl. "I've missed him," she whispers. Naruto stares at the bulb. 10 whole years. We were little when he left. Why did he have to leave though? Was it that bad? Mom and dad were here. Gigi. Bach-an and Shizune Nisan, she whispers. We were blind to his suffering, a voice comments. The twins turn and see their mother with a saddened look. "I had my hands full with the 2 of you, but your brother always kept things to himself," Kushina says and takes a seat. Mito and Naruto sit up as Mito holds Kali and Kushina sighs. "I think it's time I told you the truth about your brother and the circumstances of his birth and leaving," she explains. "Sachi was born 2 years before the Kyuubi attack. I was in Anbu at the time. Minato and I were not too long married. I was on a mission with someone I considered a friend and he took advantage of me," she starts. "Mom, you were. You know," Naruto said and Kushina slowly nods, wiping a tear. "I was and I killed him. It was after that Minato placed a Hurricane seal on me," Kushina starts. "I was so ashamed I didn't leave the compound. I learned a month later I was pregnant. Minato didn't take it well and we talked about ending the pregnancy, but I refused. I refused to end a life because of what one person did. My friends Tsume, Hitomi and Mikoto were the only ones I told. Minato told everyone who asked that I was on a long-term mission to our ancestral home of Izushi-Ugakure. 9 months later I held a small baby boy with big purple eyes. I instantly fell in love with him," Kushina adds. "I bet Nai was cute," Mito says. Kushina giggles with a soft look. "He was. I soon left the compound and people were shocked that I had a baby, but I held my head high and told the truth. Many accepted it, but quite a few cursed him as a taint on Minato's legacy. Minato dispelled that, but I knew it bothered him, she continues, but pauses and sighs. The son but not his own, and as soon as I able to. We tried for our own child and were blessed with 2 beautiful girls. Sachi was so happy too and would always fall asleep on my every growing tummy, but that terrible night came. Having the Kyuubi ripped from me by the masked man and Minato sealing half of Kyuubi's chakra in U2 and the soul with 1 tail's worth of chakra into Sachi, Kushina explains. In the aftermath, Minato declared what he had done. Many who disliked Sachi became more vocal, saying because of him the Kyuubi got free, and many more called for his death and praised yours, Kushina adds. Naruto and Mito gasp in horror, they wanted to kill a 2-year-old child. Naruto says. Kushina sniffles with a nod. Minato tried to make the people to see reason and declared a law preventing harm with harsh consequences for the perpetrators, but they found loopholes with emotional abuse and neglect. I was so wrapped up in taking of a pair newborns. I saw less of my own son. Thankfully Maiko-chan and Jiji took care of him, but it all came to a head at the Kyuubi festival when you were 6. Sachi was attacked by civilians and shinobi. Luckily my student Shishio stopped them. That day I put my foot down and I begged Shishio to take him out the village and train him, she explains. I remember that day Nai's eyes were always so bright, but that day they were sad and his smile looked so painful, Mito said. I was mad at him for going, Naruto whispers and Kali leaps in her lap. No mad now, Kali asks, and Naruto shakes her head. No, I'm just glad he's back, Naruto states. XXX. Mitsuomi enters the Hokage tower with a sigh. You need to tell him, Kyuubi chides, and he nods, making his way to Minato's office. His secretary sits at her desk as Mitsuomi walks up, as Lord Hokage, and Mitsuomi asks. Yes, he's currently speaking with Sandaime-sama, the woman says, blushing. Mitsuomi moves his white bang. Can I see him, he asks, and the woman blinks. Oh, of course, she says. Mitsuomi nods gingerly and moves to knock twice. Come in, Minato shouts. Mitsuomi steps inside as the Sandaime has his pipe in his mouth on the sofa and Minato at his desk. What can I do for you, Mitsuomi? Minato asks. Well, I wanted to talk business. Something that your shadows don't need to be privy of at the moment, Mitsuomi states. Minato's eyes narrow, but he taps his desk and the Anbu vanish. What about, he questions. The snake, Mitsuomi simply says, and Hirizen's eyes narrow this time. What about my wayward student, Hirizen asks. Mitsuomi folds his arms with a rub of his head. He's planning an invasion with Suna, he replies, and both men's breath hitch. How valid is this information, Minato asks, regaining his composure. 100% confirmed. The snake tried to recruited me under my white storm guise. He sent several someones to intimidate me, Mitsuomi states. Hirizen wearily sighs with a puff of his pipe. I take it you declined, he says. I sent back bodies, but one body proved useful and said body is how I learned of the plot, Mitsuomi says, slightly smirking. But how can you be sure the person is relaying accurate information, Minato asks, but Mitsuomi taps his eye. This person is close to the snake, Mitsuomi replies. Why would Suna align with Orochimaru, Hirizen asks. Mitsuomi pulls a cigarette from his pack. The current Wind Daimyo is a hedonistic idiot and has been sending missions meant for Suna. Here and the snake is playing on that. Iwa may hitch themselves to this invasion as well, he explains, sparking up. What if Kumo or Kiri, Minato asks, but Mitsuomi shrugs his shoulders. I'm on somewhat good term with the current Hokage because of Yujito, and Kiri is dealing with a civil war, Mitsuomi replies. Minato, we should prepare discreetly as not alert Orochimaru or Danzo for that matter. I wouldn't put back him to use the chaos to usurp control, Hirizen says and looks to Mitsuomi, and you'll help me get back into fighting shape, he adds. Mitsuomi smiles softly with a nod. Of course, he replies. Sandaime-sama. If it is alright with you. I'd like to speak to Mitsuomi alone, Minato asks. Hirizen take a puff of his pipe as he rises from his seat. Of course, but please don't destroy the office, he says, patting Mitsuomi on the shoulder. Hirizen closes the door as the room goes silent as surrogate son and father stare at one another. Mitsuomi, I wanted to say. I'm sorry for the position I've put you in concerning the Chunin exams and everything, Minato says, breaking the silence. Mitsuomi took a slow drag and exhales smoke through his nose. Your apology is 16 years too late. As for the Chunin exams, I made the choice to run solo, he says. I know that. I just want to fix what happened between us, Minato says, but Mitsuomi scoffs. You can't fix it. You let Jiraiya and others get in your head that I'm the taint on your legacy. The villagers considered me the reason for the Kyuubi attack, and my birth was the cause. Outside the mansion I was treated like a leper despite your stupid law. I used to see people who beat me on the street days later like nothing happened. Hell, the night of the Kyuubi festival when I was 8 had civilians and your shinobi trying to kill me, but what did you do? Nothing. I had to leave this place just to survive. Leave my mom and my sisters for 10 hecking years, Mitsuomi rants. I put my faith in the people to see you and your sisters as the heroes you were, Minato says, but Mitsuomi scoffs once again. Well, you saw how that worked. 16 years later and their grief and hate has yet to dissipate, but they worship Naruto and Mito, Mitsuomi shot. Hell, that night if you could've. Would you have used me as a sacrifice to the Shinigami instead of yourself, Mitsuomi adds. Minato shoots from seat and slams his hands on the table. How can you even say that? He shouts, with a serious look. Mitsuomi closes the gap between them with the table as a barrier. I can, because can you say with 100% certainly? That if given the choice. Would you have used my life as payment to the Shinigami instead of your own, he shouts. Purple met ocean blue in a contest of wills, but Minato falters, I thought so. That night was forever etched into my memory. I won't take your soul today, Minato Namikaze, but it will be mine in time. However, I look forward to what this little one will do. As he pointed his deathly fingers at me, Mitsuomi states. Minato falls back in his chair with a regretful look on his face. I was too naive it seems, but Mitsuomi, please give the people a chance. They can change, he says. Mitsuomi slams his fist on the table. You darn right you're naive. A chance. They had 10 years to change, but not even a month, and nothing has changed. Right back to glares and whispers. Hell, given the chance some of the shinobi would try to kill me, he shouts and heads for the door. Would you have told the village if my mom was still a Jinchuriki, Mitsuomi adds and slams the door. Minato slumps in his chair as he rubs his forehead. That went better than I thought, he muses. XXX. Mitsuomi stalks through the village, a scowl on his face and a cigarette burning in his mouth. Mitsuomi has his hood up to hide his scowling features. You should calm down. It's storming here, Kyuubi chides, watching the lightning storm from the church. Mitsuomi spat out his butt with a sigh. Sorry, but he annoyed me off, he thought. Mitsuomi continues through the village and finds a bar. What will you have, a man says, as Menma sits. Vodka and leave the bottle, Mitsuomi says, and tosses some money, with his hood up. The bartender places the bottle and fills the glass. Finally come home, Hakuto, he says. Mitsuomi looks up from his drink to an older man with gray hair. Hero, he says. Have been a while, Munchkin, Hero jokes. Mitsuomi downs his drink and pours another. I'm a Munchkin no more, he says, and Hero laughs. No kidding. How long you've been back, Hero asks. Few weeks and people know I'm back too, Mitsuomi replies, downing another glass. I heard. It's nothing but the Kyuubi brat this or Kyuubi brat that, Hero comments. Mitsuomi pours another drink as two jonin approach the bar. Double whiskey, one says. Triple rum for me, the other says. Hero fixes their drinks as Mitsuomi downs his third. Sina, you heard the demon has returned, the first jonin comments. A dirty look forms on Sina's face. Hecking monster, hasn't it ruined our lives enough? Right, Mako, he sneers. Mako downs his whiskey. Yeah, Yondaime-sama should have killed it years ago, he boasts. Another double, old man, Mako says, but Hero glares at the Mako. I don't like that talk in my bar. If say another word. I'm tossing you, Hero says. Sina glares back, Hero, but a sneer forms. I bet you're a demon lover, he says, but his eyes widen in horror. As a chilling cold blast Kai fills the room, and its source was next to them, knocking Mako from the chair. Mitsuomi pulls his hood down with slitted purple eyes and a blank look on his face. He is no demon lover. He's a good man, unlike trash like you, he coldly, hopping off the stool. 3 Anbu enter the bar and one of them was Nico. What is going on? She shouts. Mako shakes his finger at Mitsuomi. The demon tried to kill us. He shouts. Mitsuomi cancels his Kai with a scoff. You're not worth the effort, he says, walking back the Anbu. Aren't you gonna arrest him? Sina shouts. Nico glares behind her mask. Hiro-san, did he attack them? She asks. Hiro folds his arms with a look to the jonin. No, but they broke the Yondaime's law, he says, and both pale. I see, we will take them to Ibiki, Nico orders, and the two Anbu grab Sina and Mako to vanish in a swirl of leaves. XXX. Mitsuomi arrives back at the Namikaze estate and finds his mother waiting. Can you escort a pretty lady on a walk, she says. Mitsuomi tilts his head with a look. Sure, where is she, he says and dodges a chain. Kidding, he adds. The pair head towards the Hokage monument, but namely Minato's head. I used to bring you here as a baby. You use grab at the stars, Kushina muses. Mitsuomi chuckles as they shunshin atop the head. I miss this, he says, with a big inhale of air. Mother and son take a seat, but said son lays his head in his mother's lap. I fought with him today, he muses. Oh god. You didn't kill Minato, Kushina asks, but Mitsuomi shakes his head. Gigi said the same thing, Mitsuomi says. Kushina softly giggles as she strokes his hair. Good, then you didn't ruin my evil plan, she says. Mitsuomi quirks an eyebrow as Kushina continues. Well, you're gonna be the Uzumaki head. Mito will be the Namikaze head and Naruto will be Hokage with Minato. Bach-an and I as her advisor, she notes. Wow, that is as diabolical as Jiji mobilizing the squirrels to combat Na, Mitsuomi says, and Kushina nods. I know, right? Last time I was there I saw several squirrels marching, Kushina said. Mitsuomi softly laughs as does Kushina. I've missed you, mom, he says, and Kushina kisses his forehead. I've missed you, Sachi. My precious boy, Kushina muses. Mother and son continue to watch the beautiful sunset before returning home for a light dinner. Mitsuomi opts to take a shower as Konan, Kuritsuchi and Yujito arrived with Anko. After a very soothing bath and bathing a certain little tiger, out he steps in boxer briefs and a towel on his head with a tiger in his arms. Geez, a voice comments. Mitsuomi lifts the towel enough and sees Anko without her coat and sandals on the bed. Where's the others, he asks. Anko stares at Mitsuomi's scars but blinks. With your sisters, she replies. Can I play with them, Kali asks and lets her down. Don't get too dirty, Mitsuomi says, closing the door and activating a privacy seal. He then slips on a pair of shorts and grabs a shirt. So what's up, Mitsuomi asks. Nothing, wanted see you and heck you, Anko says, eyeing his shorts. Mitsuomi rubs his forehead and slicks back his bangs. My mom and sisters are in the house, and no, he replies, slipping on the wife beater. Anko pouts slightly but smirks, that's the thrill of it besides. Who doesn't want to sleep with the one they love, she says. Mitsuomi plops on his back and Anko straddles him on the bed. You love me, he says, and Anko touches the scar on his face. I do, but tell nobody, Anko shot. Mitsuomi snorts and pins his purple eyes on her pupil-less brown orbs. I could be kicked out, Konoha. If things go to nonsense during the Chunin exams, he says. Anko runs her fingers down his neck and to his burns. I'll resign and follow you wherever, she says, reaching the hem of the shirt. Anko shifts back across his lower region and lifts the shirt. How you'd get this, she asks. I tangled with the Black Spider clan of Hotwater Country, Mitsuomi replies. Anko traces his abs with a stare. This one, she notes. Mitsuomi taps the scar under his eye. Fought Jashiness named Kaihei, he says, but softly groans. This one, Anko coos, rocking back and forth. Mitsuomi turns his head with a sigh. A proper naughty snake, he replies. Anko leans down and turns his face to her own. Could be poison. I should suck it out, she purrs and prepares to rock his world. If we go through this and my mom walks in, Mitsuomi says, and a chill goes up Anko's spine. Why, you're right, Anko says, and Mitsuomi chuckles. Kit. I may have a way to get rid of your friends, Mark Kyubi says, and Mitsuomi furrows his brow, confusing Anko. How, Mitsuomi thought. My chakra should be able to erode that snake's mark. I want you to channel chakra to your mouth and bite the mark, Kyubi explains. What, Anko says, and Mitsuomi sighs. Kyubi has a way to get rid of your mark, Mitsuomi says, and Anko's eyes widen. She wants to bite the mark with her chakra channel to my teeth, he adds. Anko sits up on his lap with thought in her brown eyes. Do it then, she says. We don't know if this will work, Mitsuomi says, and Anko punches his chest. And what if it does? You don't, how long I have wished to free of this burden, Anko says, her tone shaky. Mitsuomi sighs and sits up as he channels Kyubi's chakra to his mouth. His eyes become red with black slits and his canines more defined. Anko moves her mesh top to show her curse mark and Mitsuomi bites down, causing her to grit her teeth and groan in pain. The mark sizzles from the infusion of corrosive chakra and burns the skin, but it fades as Mitsuomi lets go, collapsing onto his back. Anko pants heavily but looks to see the burned skin and faded curse mark before tears start to run down her cheeks. Thank you. Oh God. Thank you, Anko whispers. Mitsuomi reaches up to caress her cheek and she leans into his touch. Don't thank me. I would do anything for someone I love, he says. Anko settles on top of him and Mitsuomi wraps his arms around her waist. Just you wait. When I get the chance. I am going to rock your world, she says, and Mitsuomi chuckles. A few days later. Mitsuomi along with Konan, Kuritsuchi, Yujito, Naruto, Mito and Kushina were heading to hospital for his treatment session. Kushina immediately went into mother hen mode, but Mitsuomi backed her. The worst was over, but she insisted on coming. The group arrive and head upstairs where Tsunade was waiting in a large exam room. Yujito, Kuritsuchi, Kali and Kushina wait in the observation area as the others head for the room. Shizune greets them with a bow. Welcome home, little bro, she says. Hello, big sis, Mitsuomi replies, bowing as well and sharing a quick hug. Inside, Tsunade has 4 students and a few doctors. Shockingly, one was Sakura, and rounding out the group was Ino Yamanaka, Hana Inuzuka and Hinata Hyuga. Mitsuomi greets each, but Sakura shot him a glare. Mitsuomi, remove your shirt and bandages. Then we'll get started with the session, Tsunade says. Mitsuomi slowly nods as he pulls off the shirt, handing it to Naruto and removing the bandages into a pile. Ino was blushing at Mitsuomi's body, but pales as does Sakura and a few doctors. Mitsuomi-san, how did happen, Hinata says, and turns to the young Hyuga heir. I was defending the granddaughter of the hot water daimyo from a band of shinobi, Mitsuomi explains, hopping on the table. Tsunade clears her throat to garner everyone's attention. As you can see, our patient Mitsuomi has suffered severe acidic burns to his entire left arm and side, she explains. The injuries were caused by a jutsu called Acid Storm. They were treated by the young lady to Mitsuomi's right, and I'll let her explain further, Tsunade states. Conan steps forward with a bow. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. The caster of the jutsu possessed the Kekkei Genkai for the vapor release. Luckily, I was able to treat him in time with clean water and a salve I made from various flowers, but I also feared the acid seeped into his muscle tissue, but that's beyond my skill level, she explains. That's why we're here today. The Med-Nin program is essential to teams today to cut down casualties and allow shinobi to broaden their horizons, Tsunade explains. Tsunade then turns Mitsuomi with an apologetic look. I bet you're like the twins, and sedatives would be useless. So clench your teeth, she says. Mitsuomi furrows his brow but got his answer as Tsunade punches him in the face, rendering him unconscious on the table. Naruto stifles a laugh as Tsunade clears her throat again. Now, as I was saying, I've already performed the Mystic Palm technique and found that some acid has seeped into his muscle tissue. So today we'll extract the acid residue and heal the internal injuries, she explains. Shizune wheels in a cart with several tubs of liquid as Tsunade secures Menma to the table. Now Conan, since you did first aid and aftercare, I'll show you the technique and allow you to try, Tsunade says, and Conan nods. Mito and the others gather on Mitsuomi's right side. The name of this jutsu is called Seiken Shishutsu no Jutsu. This solution next to me will apply directly to his body and slowly draw out the acidic residue, Tsunade explains. Tsunade places her hand in one of the tubs and pulls contents into her hand with chakra. Tsunade then places the solution on Mitsuomi's side and slowly pushes it inside with her free hand, now she says, and pulls with her free hand, pushes with her occupied hand. Everyone gasps as the solution exits with a dark yellow substance within as Tsunade drops it into an empty tub. Is that the acid, Hinata asks. It is. Once we finish, he'll have improved motor function. Conan, were there moments of twitches or baby movements after the attack, Tsunade states. Conan slowly nods as she looks down at Mitsuomi. Yes. It persisted for about a month and slowly went away, but he often complained of stiffness, she explains. I see. Well, Conan, let's get started on his arm, Tsunade states, and explains how to grasp the solution. XXX. Clench my teeth, Mitsuomi says, and sits up but finds himself in his mindscape. Of course sedatives don't work, he muses. Kyubi was watching from an elevated throne. Your bochan packs quite the wallop, she muses. Mitsuomi rubs his cheek with a shake of his head. No kidding. I'm going spar in the arena until I wake up, he says, kipping up. I'll provide you some entertainment. Black Rock or dead, Master, Kyubi asks. Mitsuomi glances back as he opens the church doors. Both, he says. The landscape outside the church was a world of night with a huge full moon and lightning dancing in the sky. Mitsuomi took the intricate paths towards the arena littered in chains, and at the center stood two women. The first was a pale girl with long black hair and twintails, blue eyes, but one glowing and dressed in boots with white tips. Black shorts and bra with a long black coat and a white star printed on the back. The second was pale as well in a gothic black dress and glowing green eyes and claw-like fingers and horns. Mitsuomi enters the arena as his Daido swords appear at his sides in their sheaths. Let's go, he shouts, activating his Sharingan. DM raises her hand as a black scythe appears with two floating skulls with glowing green eyes. BRS raises her arm as a cannon forms around the arm and her eye glows more, leaving a streak of blue. Music. Black Rock Shooter Battle of BRS. Mitsuomi sprints forward as BRS points her cannon to open fire. Using Shikuchi, he dodges the blue blast. DM shoots forward with a leap to meet Mitsuomi, but he blocks and counters with his trick, narrowly dodging her skulls in the process. DM slams her scythe into the ground to send a wave of energy, but Mitsuomi drives his lightning-infused sword in the fissure, negating it. BRS turns her cannon into a sword from behind with a downward swing, but Mitsuomi blocks with his Joker, his Sharingan Tomo spinning wildly. One skull slams into Mitsuomi as BRS kicks back, and DM gives an echoing melanter, but her eyes widen as Mitsuomi slashes the skull in half. Brain. By Akurai, Mitsuomi shouts, taking out the other with a blast of pale lightning. DM shoots forward with a pressing attack as BRS changes back to her cannon and charges a blast. Mitsuomi heaves DM back and leaps to dodge as the blast fires. Raiden Kenjutsu. White lightning slash, he shouts, as lightning erupts from his swords and cleaves the blast in half. Mitsuomi shoots from the smoke with his trick running through BRS, and she shatters into blue clawback. Mitsuomi sheathes his joker as DM shoots forward into a furious rush as sparks erupt from their clashes. Soon the side flings into pieces, but DM tosses the piece away with a lick of her fingers. DM leaps as chains erupt from her back, forcing him to dodge with fervent speed and her giving chase along the chains. Mitsuomi bads as a chain snags his leg and he throws a block to block DM's heel, but more chains ensnare him and lift him high. DM's echoing melinter fills the arena, but lightning erupts from Mitsuomi's body and through the chains, breaking him free, and he raises his trick. White lightning surges around and out of the white Daido, Raiten Kenjutsu. Thunderbolt cut, Mitsuomi shouts, swing down and carving a gash through the ground, and DM. Clapping soon echoes as Kyubi enters the arena. Impressive kid. Your 6 dances of Raiten are quite the sight. Dragonstrike. Thunderbolt cut. White lightning slash. Still 3 more to show me, she comments, and Mitsuomi was about to comment but felt the pull of awakening. Song ends. XXX. Mitsuomi slowly awoke in a private room, his arm once again bandaged and Kali on his chest. Mitsuomi scratches behind her ear and the little tiger purrs. Nai-san awake, she asks. The other occupant stirs as Kushina rushes to his bedside. Sachi, she says. Mitsuomi sits up with a groan. Where is everyone, he asks. Bakashi took them on a D-rank mission and Konan is resting from chakra overuse. She did really well, Kushina explains. The door opens as Yujito and Kurisuchi step in with Anko. Finally up, slacker, or did I wear you out last night? Anko shot. Mitsuomi playfully glares and tosses the covers. TMI in front of my mom, he says, rotating his arm. Mitsuomi grabs his shirt and slips it on as Yujito picks up Kali. I'll take you to Konan, she says. I'll head to tower and see Minato, Kushina said, as they file out, and Anko heads back to the T&I department. So Konan wore herself out, Mitsuomi asks. Yujito strokes Kali's fur. Yeah, but she was amazing. Your grandmother lives up to her skill and in teaching. Each student got a chance, but that pink monkey refused, and Hana was checking you out, but she knew who you belonged to, she explains. To us, but hey, the more the merrier, Kuritsuchi comments. Mitsuomi snorts and softly opens the resting room, his angel sleeping in a cot. Kali jumps down and then jumps into the cot to snuggle. Nisan warm, she purrs. Konan slowly stirs as Mitsuomi kneels. I hear I owe you, he says. It was nothing, but I expect your famous packages, Konan says and snuggles Kali. Now let me sleep, she says. Mitsuomi kisses her temple and quietly steps out. Well, I'm here, I can visit Izumi, he says. Who's Izumi, Yujito insinuates. Mitsuomi scoffs to pocket his hands, survivor of the Uchiha Bakasur like Makoto Abasan and her son. She's been in a coma ever since. A high-level genjutsu, he explains. The trio reached the long-term care wing and to Izumi's room. Inside was a young woman with long brown hair. Itachi did this, Yujito asks, and Mitsuomi nods. And to me it proves Itachi didn't snap or test himself. Izumi loves him and he loves her, Mitsuomi replies. Yujito wraps her arms around him from behind as Kuritsuchi takes his bandaged hand. When we fight, I'll know the truth, Mitsuomi whispers. Mitsuomi, Kuritsuchi and Yujito soon leave and head to the roof, with him perching himself on the water tower and Yujito in his lap. Kuritsuchi stands with her arms folded as the 3 sit in silence. I'm curious. If A asked you to return to Kumo, would you, Mitsuomi asks. Yujito looks at the sky but shakes her head, though I would miss a few people. My place is wherever you go. You are my maid as well as Konan and Kuritsuchi too. Plus I like your mom and sisters, she replies. Well-spoken kitten, Matatabi said. Mitsuomi holds Yujito closer with his face in the crook of her neck. So how's my other half been doing, he muses. He never shuts up. Always on this rant about original this or original that, Kuritsuchi says, taking a seat next to him. Yujito scoffs with a look on her face. Right, mouthy. He's guarding Koyuki-sama and taking the odd job to keep the fame, she says, and Mitsuomi softly grunts. Thanks, Nakohim. Tara, Mitsuomi says, and Yujito giggles. You're welcome, and I expect a head pat for doing good, Yujito says, taking his hand patting her head. Mitsuomi starts to hum as Yujito snuggles closer and Kuritsuchi leans into his shoulder. And I know. I'm not the first to have come here. Someone told me. You can help me with so many layers, he muses. In a village past the mountains of your world. Someone told her death was coming soon. To all of us, Yujito and Kuritsuchi continue. Makoto appears via flame shunshin. How's Konan, she shouts. She's resting in one of the room, Menma replies, and all 3 hop down. Any missions worth going on, he asks. Makoto shakes her head with a sigh. Only D ranks and Kakashi took the last C rank, she replies. Yujito tsks as Mitsuomi sighs. Well, I guess we can try another time, he says. A week later. Mitsuomi skids to a halt but leaps back as he dodges Yujito's flaming Nezumi and quickly breaks left to dodge Konan's paper shuriken, then skyward to dodge Kuritsuchi's earth spears. Suiton. Miserapa, Konan thought, firing a blast of water. Mitsuomi backpedals in a weave of signs to Tiger, Kaiten. Gakakyu no jutsu, he thought, countering. Yujito races through the steam generated with her nails extended, but Mitsuomi blocks with his bracer, still no joker trick she shot. Mitsuomi and Yujito kick back, but he closes the gap with his palm on her belly. Nope, he says, with a slight twitch, and Yujito flies back. I hate your bullet, Yujito hisses. Mitsuomi melenters and ducks under a high roundhouse from Kuretsuchi and dodges Konan's water whips, however suddenly chains ensnare him from behind. Yujito, Kuretsuchi and Konan spy Mito and Naruto, but the blonde was rushing Mitsuomi. A spiraling orb forms in her hand as Naruto near him, Rasengan she shouts, but Mitsuomi shifts enough that his bracer took the brunt. Mitsuomi skids to a halt with a shake of his arm, Rasengan ha. Signatures of the Yondaime Hokage and Jiraiya of the Sannin, he says, places his hand on his hips. Have you added an elemental affinity, Mitsuomi asks. Not yet, but mom says I try to add few, Naruto replies, and suddenly holds up her bulb, plus I finished this. Now can you teach me a jutsu, she adds. Naruto powers the bulb for 10 continuous minutes as Mitsuomi took a thinking pose. Alright. I'll teach you too since you're my kawaii sister and Mito, I'll teach you too Suiten jutsu I know, he says. Naruto pumps her fist as Mito blushes, thanks. Nai nai. Mitsu nai, both say. Okay, the first is for Naruto, Mitsuomi says and points his left index and middle finger, first channel Raiten into these fingers. Then call out Raiten. By Akurai, he adds. A stream of pale lightning shoots from the digits, it'll take some practice. Too much and it backfires, or too little, and it fizzles out, Mitsuomi explains. The second is actually for both of you as a combination jutsu, Mitsuomi explains. Mitsuomi starts to weave signs and stops a tiger, Suiten. Sujinheki, he says and weaves several more signs, Raiten. Kanjikiha, he adds. The lightning rides along the wave of water, now the last you've both seen. Kirigakure no jutsu, Mitsuomi says, creating the thick mist. Mitsuomi then claps his hands, 100 clones each. 25 to practice each jutsu, he says, creating 4 clones of his own. The 4 took the 25 each and began the session. That's Darui's combination jutsu, Yujito notes. Mitsuomi takes a seat on the grabak, yay. I may have swiped it from him, he muses. Who's Dari, Naruto says, as all of them take a seat. Mitsuomi falls on his back as Kali pounces on his chest, and Yujito shakes her head. Darui is the right-hand man of the current Hokage, and was trained by the former Hokage. Dubbing him Darui the Black Lightning, she explains. Black Lightning, Mito questions. Mitsuomi sparks up a cigarette and blows smoke for Kali to swat. It was the specialty of the Sandaime Hokage. It has more penetrating power than conventional Raiten, he says, and channels his Shiro Kaminari. Mitsunai, why is your Raiten white, Naruto asks. Mitsuomi's apps Kali and she growls but paws at the hand, dunno. It's always like this, he says. Big brother Liger says. Nai-san is weirdo, Kali says and Kuretsuchi snorts. Mitsuomi makes a face, oh really, he says and kips up with Kali. Mitsuomi pricks his finger and weaves several signs, Kuchius no jutsu, he shouts. Everyone steps back as a puff of smoke fills the field and a few bolts of lightning, for thousands of years. I have lain dormant. Who dares disturb my slumber, a voice booms. A full-grown Siberian tiger with blue fur emerges with glowing red eyes. Oh, it's you. Explain, he says. Big brother calls Nai-san a weirdo, Mitsuomi says, Kali on his head. Liger stares at Kali and then to Mitsuomi, and your point. You are a weird, he replies, but backs his head into him, but you're a cool weird, he adds. Mitsuomi snorts and ruffles Liger's blue fur, so are you, he says and Liger recoils. How dare you? Liger shouts and dispels. Konan and Mito hold their laughter, but Yujito, Kuretsuchi and Naruto were outright laughing, as Mitsuomi stood with an amused but angered look. Cheeky idiot, Mitsuomi mutters and pulls Kali from his head. The next few hours were trial and error by the twins as Mitsuomi gives tips, eventually Mikoto and Kushina found them. You're a good teacher, Sachi. Will you take a team when you eventually make Jonin, Kushina asks. Mitsuomi rubs his head with a drag and exhale, doubted. I'll probably go the hunter nin route with Konan. Kuro and Yugi, he replies. That's a shame. Kushina is right. You would make a good teacher, Mikoto comments. Mitsuomi took a thinking pose, but suddenly an Anbu drops down, dressed in a black and hooded cloak with monkey mask. Forgive my intrusion, but Sandaime-sama has requested Mitsuomi Kiryu for a mission discussed with him previously, the Anbu states. Kushina looks to her son, Jiji wants me to help him get in shape, Mitsuomi explains. How long will you be gone, Kushina asks, and Mitsuomi rubs his chin, thought. He will return in time for the Chunin exams, the Anbu answers. Naruto and Mito immediately hug their brother, I'll be back before you know it, he says. Yujito, Kuretsuchi and Konan give him a kiss, and Kushina gives him a hug and kiss. Mitsuomi summons his grey cloak and vanishes with the Anbu, where to Jiji, he asks. The Anbu removes their mask to reveal Hiruzen. We'll be going after numerous bandit camps, but publicly call me Seru, he says, and Mitsuomi salutes with a Godage Seru. Junin exam round 1. Team 7 head for room 301 after Sasuke boasts about the genjutsu, but was humbled by Rock Lee of Team 9 in a fight. The twins were worried for their big brother, but Kuritsuchi, Konan, Yujito and their mother assured them he would be okay after not seeing him since he left with the Anbu. Sasuke throws open the door, and they were hit by some Kai as they enter, before Ino glomps Sasuke and Sakura starts arguing with her. Shikamaru mutters troublesome as Choji eats chips, while Kiba boasts all the rookies were in the exams. Naruto looks around the room and spy at least 2 teams from Kumo and single teams from Suna, Iwa and Kiri, including various other villages. Mito taps her shoulder and points as they see their brother leaning on a wall, dressed in his black and white cargos with black combat boots, its tips and heels were white. A form-fitting long-sleeved blue shirt, but the left sleeve missing with the Uzumaki swirls on the upper sleeve, his left arm bandaged and bracer on top of that with black gloves, the index and middle fingers were maroon. The black sleeveless and high-collar jacket having white design similar to lightning, his hit-eye around his neck. Mitsuomi approaches as Kabuto was talking to the other rookies about his ninja cards. I wanna know about Rock Lee. Garasabaku and Mitsuomi Uzumaki, Sasuke said. Kabuto adjusts his glabaks. Oh, so you know their names. Let's see. Rock Lee has been a genin for a year. Teammates Neji Hyuga and Tenten Higurashi. 40 D rank missions. 5 C rank missions and incapable of ninjutsu and genjutsu, but excels at taijutsu. Garasabaku. 50 D rank. 20 C rank and 5 B rank and has never been injured. Lastly Mitsuomi Uzumaki. Ha, there's nothing on him, Kabuto said. Mitsuomi pats Kabuto on the back of his neck. Why not try Mitsuomi Kiryu, he says. Oh, here it is, odd again with 1 C rank and taking the exam solo, Kabuto states. The other rookies and some of the others murmur, who is this guy, Kiba says. Our older brother, Kiba, Mito says. The Odo team was about to attack, but all 3 halt as Mitsuomi looks back with the coldest eyes. Suddenly a man with several scars on his face dressed in grey and black trench coat appears. Alright you maggot, sit down and let's commence the first part of the Chunin exams, he shouts, and everyone takes their seats. My name is Ibiki Marino, and the first part of this exam is a written test. It's 9 questions with a 10th given towards the end. Cheating is not allowed. If you are caught you lose 10 points. Get caught 3 times and you're out with your whole team, Ibiki states in some protest. Tough nonsense, now begin, he shot. Mitsuomi sits on the last row next to an AIM shinobi and few other shinobi as his eyes drift around the room. No cheating. It's obvious they want you to, Kyubi comments. More than likely, Mitsuomi thought and saw the AIM nin was finished. Mitsuomi raises his hand and punches the shinobi in the jaw and takes his paper. Hey, that's cheating, Ibiki shouts. Mitsuomi shrugs his shoulder and writes his name on the paper. Only one still got 2 chances, Proctor, he says. Ibiki glares at Mitsuomi, but smirks. Alright, I'll give you that one, Ibiki says. Time ticks down as several teams were booted. Alright, the 10th question, Ibiki says and explains it, causing a few more to drop out. Anyone else, Ibiki says, and no one moves. Well, you ult back, he adds and shows his scars. Suddenly the window shatters as a sign is pinned to the wall, and Anko appears. Wow, Ibiki, this many. You must be slipping, she says. Maybe a good crop this year and you're early again, Ibiki said, but Anko scoffs. Alright, follow me to stage 2. Training ground 44, Anko says and leaps out once again. About 20 minutes later all the genin were gathered at the main gate of the Forest of Death. Welcome kiddies to my playground. Training ground 44, or as I called it, the Forest of Death, Anko shouts. Now for the second phase of the exams, you kiddies have 5 days to traverse the forest to the tower in the center with both of these scrolls, Anko says and holds the scroll. One is the Heaven Scroll and the other is the Earth Scroll. You need both to enter the tower and do not open until then, she adds. Several genin protest about food and such, but Anko spies Kiba not paying attention. Mitsuomi watches as Anko slice open Kiba's cheek with her kunai, and a tall kusanin brings it to her, but his eyes narrow. Get? Kyubi said. Mitsuomi mentally nods as he approaches the tent to get his scroll. Here you go, rookie, Anko says, but Mitsuomi leans closer. I need a favor. Go to my mom and tell her that there is a snake hidden in the grabak, Mitsuomi whispers and clips his eyes to her shoulder. Anko freezes and her eyes widen, but looks into his purple eyes. Don't be reckless, go to my mom, Mitsuomi says, and Anko slowly nods. Well, good luck and try not to die, Anko shouts. Mitsuomi snorts and exits the tent to reach his designated gate to enter the forest, noticing the 2 Kumo teams were at this gate, as well as the AIM nin he punched out in his team. Excess hecking drama, Mitsuomi thought, slipping the Earth Scroll in his cargo pocket. Mitsuomi slips into a cat-like runner's stance. Alright, I'll put some distance between us and wait for the ambush, he thought, and the buzzer sounds. The gate opens and all the teams launch through the gate, but the shocker was Mitsuomi almost inhuman running speed as he seems move like lightning. Mitsuomi makes a reinforced Kage Bunshin to shadow his sisters as he comes to a halt in a clearing. Suddenly 3 Kumo shinobi exit from the trees in front of Mitsuomi, all dressed in typical Kumo garb with 2 men and 1 woman. The woman steps forward with a cold and condescending look. "Where is the Nibi?" she said. "Wow, straight to the point, but alas you came for nothing." "I killed that pesky cat," Mitsuomi said. The woman's eyes narrow as the 2 men step forward. "A lie. Her scent is all over you," one says. Mitsuomi blinks and sniffs his shirt. "I did take a shower this morning," he muses. "You're to hand over the Nibi. So that it may be re-educated," the other man says. Mitsuomi's purple eyes narrow as the AIM team emerges from the forest. "Time to pay for that punch," the one shouts. Mitsuomi pulls on his gloves with his eyes locked on the Kumo shinobi. "You stepped into some deep nonsense, kid. These Kumonin are Jonin level. So if you value your life, walk away," he states, but it fell on deaf ears as the Kumo males cut down the 3 AIM shinobi. "Now why did have go and do a thing like that?" Mitsuomi says, and both scoff. "The weak don't get pick how they die. Right, Hori," one says. Hori nods with a smirk. "Right, Dory. Tenya, let's kill this fool and find the Hyuga heir, the Namikaze heiresses. The council can use them for breeding purposes," Hori says. A shadow falls over Mitsuomi's face that doesn't go unnoticed by Tenya. "Care to repeat that?" Mitsuomi said. Hori was about to repeat, but he was suddenly pinned to a tree with a sword through his heart and lightning skating from the blade. Tenya and Dory were wide-eyed as Mitsuomi pulls his sword from Hori's lifeless corpse. "I never saw him move. Impossible," she thought. "Hori!" Dory shouts and charges Menma. "Itoryu!" Hekareki, Mitsuomi says, appearing behind Dory with his sword crackling. The Kumo shinobi turns slightly but only his upper half. "Ha," Dory says. Mitsuomi never took his eyes off Tenya. "Now I know I heard your name. Yujito said you were one of her staunchest tormentors," he coldly said. Tenya seizes and turns to run, but Mitsuomi appears in front of her with his sword erupting with white lightning. "Reiten Kenjutsu. Dragon Moonstrike," he shouts and swings down. Tenya screams in silence as she was slashed in 6 places, and her limbs, torso and head fell to the ground. Kyuubi shifts on her throne. "That makes 4," she muses. XXX. Team 7 have encountered much in their brief time in the Forest of Death. First encountering a shape-shifting team from AIM but managed to defeat the team. Next, Naruto was separated from her team by a huge blast of wind, leaving the rest of her team at the mercy of the suddenly appearing Kusanin. After a brief skirmish, the Gribak Nin revealed herself as Orochimaru. Another skirmish ensues as Sasuke finds his resolve, but it was for naught. Naruto rejoins the fight, but Orochimaru toys with her and dispatches the blonde with a strange seal. Mito caught her twin before she fell to the forest floor, but it allows Orochimaru to extend his neck and bite Sasuke on the neck. Sasuke cries out in pain as 3 Tomo mark forms. "Kukuku, seek me out if you want true power," Orochimaru says, but his brow furrows. Orochimaru turns and sees Mitsuomi standing on a higher branch, hands in his pockets and a blank look of cold. "Mitsunai," Mito shouts. Orochimaru chuckles darkly as Mitsuomi stares. "Kukuku, the true Kyuubi child," he sneers. Mitsuomi sees Naruto being held by Mito. "I'll teach you what it means to lay hands upon my family," he says. White lightning surges around Mitsuomi's body and spikes his hair as he lands facing Orochimaru. "Kill you as Godspeed." Music. Senna Bleach Ost. Mitsuomi stalks forward but vanishes and shocks everyone, as that the Reiten no Yoroi, Orochimaru thought, but wails in shock as Mitsuomi appears with a palm strike to the gut. Lightning erupts through the snake Sanin's body as Mitsuomi slams a right counter as Orochimaru swings. Mitsuomi slams a Superman punch into a body blow, connecting with a spinning roundhouse kick. The conscious members of Team 7 were in shock as Mitsuomi blitzes around Orochimaru, frustrating the Sanin. "How? This isn't like the Rikage, it's too concentrated," Orochimaru thought. Mitsuomi appears in front with his arms apart. "Reiten no Aogi. Counter shock," he shouts, shooting his thumbs out. Orochimaru wails in agony as he flies back with blood spurting from his mouth. Mitsuomi moves to finish off Orochimaru, but his lightning suddenly dispels. "Nonsense," Mitsuomi thought, staggering and dropping to one knee. "Nai nai," Mito shouts, but Mitsuomi raises his hand. "Mito, take them and go, I'll hold him off," Mitsuomi shouts. Orochimaru struggles to his feet as his mouth opens wide as his new self slithers out. "Now Mito," Mitsuomi shouts. Sakura grabs Sasuke and Mito, her sister, as Orochimaru glares at Mitsuomi. "Kukuku, quite the jutsu," he says. Mitsuomi slowly rises with a smirk. "I'm full of surprises, but," he says, but rest loss as Orochimaru runs him through with the sword of Kusanagi. Mitsuomi spits a stream of blood but grabs the blade. "I delayed you enough. My mother is coming," he sneers. Orochimaru pulls the sword with a glare and sinks into the ground. Mitsuomi falls to his knees with a smile. Well, that was a good test of Shinsoku. The boss will be pleased, he muses, dispelling. The real Mitsuomi comes to a halt and a smirk forms, but a scowl follows. Excellent test, but you'll get yours, Snake, he thought, continuing on. Song ends. XXX. Mito and Sakuura managed to find a hollowed-out tree for Naruto and Sasuke to rest. Sasuke was sweating profusely as Sakuura was blubbering over him. Unbeknownst to Team 7, they were being watched by the lone team from Odo. The first was the lone female of the group with long black hair, a pale green vest somewhat similar to a flak jacket and snake-patterned pants with a scarf. The second had only his eye visible of his bandaged head, wearing a large poncho with long sleeves, a snake-patterned scarf around his neck, a straw raincoat protruding from the back of his scarf. The last had spiky black hair clothed in a beige shirt with 2 black stripes and 3 prints of the kanji for death and grey pants. Is that them, Kin? The bandaged one asks, and she nods. Yes, Dosu and the Uchiha has been marked by Orochimaru-sama, Kin notes. The third member named Zaku stares at Mito with lust in his eyes. The redeed is mine, he says, as they vanish. Mito lifts Naruko's shirt and channels chakra to her sister's seal, but her eyes widen as another seal supersedes the original. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun, Sakuura whines. Suddenly 3 chakra signatures make themselves known, causing both to exit the cave, or rather Mito exits the cave. The 3 Odo shinobi encircle Mito with a tree at her back, hand over the Uchiha. Dosu states. Mito pulls 2 kunai in a reverse grips. Sakuura, I need you to back me up, she shouts, but Sakuura was cowering in the tree. Focus on us, tree idiot, Zaku shouts, firing a tight blast of wind. Mito breaks right, but she quickly blocks a kunai from Kin, and her chains blocks Dosu. The bandaged shinobi reveals his arm covered by a cylinder, melody arm. First song, he says, hitting the chains. Mito chokes back a scream as pain erupts throughout her body. What is this? She thought. Decapitating airwaves, Zaku shouts. Mito digs her chains into the dirt but falls to her knees. Sakuura, help me. She shouts but again falls on deaf ears. Kin approaches and bads Mito by the hair to look her in the eye. That idiot is no Kunoichi. Look at her hair, she sneers, kneeing Mito in the face. Mito clutches her bleeding nose and dodges Kin's sandal, but Dosu's shoulder blocks her from behind. Melody arm. Second song, Dosu said, hitting Mito's back. Zaku kicks Mito in the ribs as she collapses, and another 2 for good measure. Mito tries to summon her Biju chakra, but her body was still reeling from both sound attacks. Kin grabs Mito by the hair once again, but Mito slams her palms into Kin's chest. Suddenly 2 chains erupt from Kin's back. Kin staggers back with wide and shocked eyes as she falls to draw her last breaths. Mito uses the momentary shock to situate herself back by tree. You idiot. Zaku shouts and fires another decapitating airwaves. Mito moves left to avoid it. Sutin. Miserapa, she shouts. Zaku and Dosu dodge, but Zaku fires another airwave on the run. The blast clips Mito, but she remains vertical. Melody arm. Third song, Dosu shouts, releasing a wide blast of sound. Mito clutches her ears in pain as does Sakuura, but the tree provided enough damper. Mito falls to the ground with ringing in her ears as Zaku stalks forward with a lecherous grin. I'm gonna make you my idiot, he sneers. How about I make you my idiot, a voice coldly says. Zaku turns to a punch to face and sending him flopping back as Dosu gasps. Mito's eyes widen and tears up. Nai, she shouts. Zaku rubs his sore jaw as Mitsuomi stood in front of Mito. Who the hell are you? Zaku shouts. Mitsuomi fully faces Zaku, like the snake. I'll teach you what it means to lay hands on my family, he says. Dosu's eye narrows but widen at the tone. It can't be him, he thought. Zaku raises his hands to fire his decapitating airwaves, but Mitsuomi flashes in front of Zaku with a right uppercut into a chopping downward left. Dosu shunshins behind Mitsuomi with his melody arm high, but suddenly there was a flash, and the arm falls to the ground. Dosu cries out in agony and clutches his stump, but freezes as Mitsuomi looms over him. Beggin', he hisses. Dosu tosses his scroll at Mitsuomi's feet and rushes to Zaku as they retreat into the forest. Mitsuomi dispels his sword and turns to sister. You alright, he asks, concerned. I'll live. Thank you for saving us, Mito says. Mitsuomi looks around with a concerned look. Where's Naruto and your team, he says. Mito was about to point to the hollowed-out tree, but both were hit with a foul and dark chakra as Sasuke had awakened. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the story. If you did, please like the video. Also consider subscribing and sharing this with your friends. This will really mean a lot for me. I'll see you in the next one.